I do have a question of staff, as soon as we get his attention. Andrew, I have a question for you. Quite often in the past, and the staff, part of the staff report, there'll be a recommendation for either approval or denial, and I don't see that here. Does the staff have a position on this project?
Yeah, the recommendation is to make the findings and approve the request with the conditions, I believe it's 1 through 11.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can I ask for a couple-minute recess?
Certainly. We're in recess. And we're back in session. So I think we have more questions from the commission to staff. Am I tracking?
Yeah, I think so, Mr. Chairman. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Correct. So, So, Andrew, actually, based upon my esteemed colleague's observation here, this portion of the house that was labeled in the plans as studio and has some notations, says no kitchen or cooking appliances, and it says guest house, and then the studio is crossed out. And the applicant indicated that someone is staying here, and while they're not paying rent per se, they are actually, there's an exchange of value in that they're able to stay there and they're taking care of the property. And it seems to me, and I'm not opposed to it, I mean, as your report indicated, this actually helps the city in meeting some of its housing requirements. But it seems to me that we actually, this facility, as it's described in the staff report, this is now a multifamily facility, would actually be a 4-unit facility, not a 3-unit facility. The way that this portion of the house is being used, and it does not have direct entrance into the house. The entrance and exits go onto covered porches or decks, and someone's living there essentially. And so I'm just going to ask the question to staff, does this need to be reviewed for conditions similar to Structure B, which I believe is the game room that's to be converted into a unit? Does staff also need to look at this former studio component and see if there are any applicable conditions that need to be applied that haven't been presented to us because it wasn't considered?
Yeah, excellent question. And that is the subject matter of our recess discussion. The fourth unit, if that's what it would have been, would have required perhaps, yes, the requirements mentioned by our building official regarding the studio. However, the site, as we now understand it, and if this were to be a fourth unit, then the zoning would not permit that fourth unit because there isn't adequate site area to be consistent with our zoning ordinance. Therefore, staff has drafted a condition for the commission to consider and add to tonight's review for approval, and I'll turn this over to Director Rivas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff did have the opportunity during our recess to meet with the applicant, Mr. Dick Clayton, and he verified that indeed this is a studio apartment, if you will. Access is only provided from the outside. There is no ability for the tenant to gain access from the studio directly into the primary dwelling unit or use the kitchen facility. So this is indeed then, from staff's perspective, would be a fourth dwelling unit, though it's my understanding it currently lacks a kitchen. It is an illegal dwelling unit. There's nothing preventing him from renting, say, a room within the house, as any of us can. There's nothing in the code that would regulate that. But since this is a distinct, separate unit from the main dwelling unit, it is in violation. And so the applicant has agreed that he would basically, through building permit, modify this studio apartment so that it does have access in the main dwelling, the primary dwelling unit as identified in the staff report, therefore being in full compliance. And so we've on the fly drafted a condition for the commission's consideration. You could add to the conditions that we are proposing. Therefore, if you approve it, you have the ability now to approve the request with this condition, and therefore when he comes in for his building permit, he can modify it. It'll be legal, and hopefully everything can move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and read the condition into the record, and feel free to modify it accordingly if you like. Staff is recommending that you would add a additional condition to read as follows. The third bedroom shown on the submitted plans located at the northeast corner of the primary dwelling unit, comma, currently without access to the interior, comma, shall be modified through building permit to provide access from within the interior of the primary dwelling, period. No kitchen shall be permitted within subject bedroom. And that's the extent of that condition.
Well, I'm sure my colleagues have some more questions for you.
couldn't it go another way and grant a variance to escape the zoning density requirements? And then just get this approved as a separate rental? But we can grant variances for outside.
No,
It
this
would
would be, I would think this would be considered a use variance. And so actually the applicant would need to apply for a rezoning of the property to allow for a greater density than what is permitted under the current zone district.
Can't do a variance to density?
Can't do a use variance.
Okay.
A variance is basically for development standards, height, that kind of thing, where this is a particular zone district that permits a maximum density, and he's just about at that maximum density. But there is the ability, if the applicant wishes, to apply for a rezone and then allow for greater density, and thus he could then create another dwelling unit.
And then there's a total of 5 cars that you have to plan for this entire property?
Correct.
So does that
Correct.
mean 2 or 3 in front of the main structure and/or 2 or 3 on the other 2? It seems pretty tight back there outside the main
Well,
residence
the
to,
garages count as parking.
okay.
So additional parking, he would need to show exterior to the building. It is staff's recommendation that additional stalls be provided, and I mentioned this in the report, to accommodate guests of those people residing on the property or family who come and visit. If you visited the site, which I'm sure you have, as you mentioned, it is tight. Yes, it is topographically challenged. There is virtually no place to park on the street. So the condition is worded that the applicant would need to come back forward with at a minimum, show the 2 stalls. We have nothing in our code that would require anything more than that. But it's encouraged that they do so. I think it might make that unit or those units more marketable.
And then I have a question on, it might be, I don't know if staff can answer it or the applicant, how does propane delivery work and trash pickup work? Do the trucks stop on Big Cut or on Phillips Court?
So I think I defer that to Mr. Clayton, but the relative nature of the area is residential. And my experience is from talking with El Dorado Disposal in the past that they are not really likened to bring up a truck that's specific for dumpsters in an area where it's really out of their normal run, so to speak, when the immediate surrounding is single family in nature, where they do utilize the three can pickup. So I think that's what and Mr. Clayton can verify whether that's true, but I believe that to be the case. If you want to invite him back up to speak.
Sure, because the garbage truck is a short stall in the road, but what about a propane delivery that
Right,
takes
but
longer?
on the units, the garbage cans are set out on Big Cut and out on Phillips Court. And the garbage truck's just coming picking up. A propane pulls right into the driveway at 3192, fills that up, and parks on Phillips and fills that one up. So that's been going on for 7 years, both those items.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions of staff or the applicant? Okay, well, at this time, I'd like to ask if there's any public input on this application.
Chris Payne, Diamond Springs. Just speaking to the project, I appreciate staff's presentation. I thought it was very thorough. But I just wanted to go over a couple of things that I picked up during the deliberation, and maybe some of it is in the paperwork behind this action tonight that I haven't seen. But back to the code violation. I believe this all starts with trying to have some resolution of the code violation. So specific just to the code violation, if there wasn't this proposal, how is that being handled, or is even that being considered by the Planning Commission tonight. And then, obviously, I can see where the resolution, that is the proposal by the applicant, seems to resolve the code violation, because you are essentially going to take an action, supposedly, that will then allow the code violation to be resolved. The applicant then is required to do some capital improvement or work to the construction to the site, and therefore the use is going to change and be consistent with the current zoning and the current general plan designation. So one more point. So the code violation, I still want to make sure that when you do your deliberation and and vote, that is consideration. And then two, it didn't talk about the electrical distribution in terms of meters, and you didn't talk about water and sewer related to the independence of those utilities related to what action is being taken tonight. So those are just technical points that I picked up on that I just wanted to share with you guys.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, well, in light of the report from staff, the addenda thereto, applicant input, public input, I'm going to bring it back to the commission for discussion.
That was a good point about having separate water and electric services to the, I guess would be 3 individual units. What is staff's position on requiring that, or do you know how it exists now?
For a multiple family unit, it is not city code to require a separate connection. If these were fee title units where they were separate ownerships, then yes, we would have required separate utility connections.
I just would add that the city will consider these connections and to be separate, distinct connections. In other words, if the applicant, and I believe there's a existing restroom, bathroom facility within the garage, for example. So that garage then is being served by the sewer connection that's part of the primary dwelling unit. If that then becomes a distinct dwelling unit, then the city will impose applicable fees, the delta difference, to what would be then an apartment, if that makes any sense. But as Mr. Painter pointed out, the city doesn't require separate meters, but the city will impose the appropriate fees for sewer and water, appropriate to a multifamily complex.
So coming back to discussion among the commissioners, are there any other elements of discussion? Do you have any things that arise from the public input that you want to discuss? And aside from that,
I guess the only thing would be is if that guest house in the main residence is not going to be a separate standalone unit, do we need a condition that states no cooking or refrigeration, whatever keeps that from not being a standalone unit? And if at any time in the future they want to make it a standalone, they need to come back to the city.
I don't think it's warranted. The city is going to treat this as another bedroom in the primary unit.
Okay.
If it were to be converted without permits or without going through some sort of city review, then it would be a code violation. I guess it kind of you can word it. Yeah, I guess I stand corrected here. Director Rivas did add as part of his condition that no kitchen shall be permitted within the subject bedroom.
Okay.
Staff would just add that typically, as Mr. Painter pointed out, we wouldn't condition all of the things you're not supposed to do, because it would go on forever. So we We recommended putting it in a sentence in this added condition only because there is what looks like a potential kitchen facility shown on the plans. And so that's the only reason why we decided to put in this case. He'll come in with new, a new set of plans that's going to show the modified floor plan, showing access to the interior of the main dwelling, and not showing anything that looks like a kitchenette.
I'd like to, Chair would like to entertain a motion from one of the Planning Commission members. We're at a point where I'll have to rely on my colleagues to craft this motion given the deltas we've gone through so far.
All right, I'll make a motion. One, make the following findings of fact, A, B, and C, D, E, F, G, and H. Number two, conditionally approve 3192 Big Cut Road and 821 Phillips Court Site Plan Review 2015-01, subject to the conditions in the staff report, page 6, 7, and 8, with attachment 1, Exhibit A, project application supporting site improvement plans, and then Director Rivas's recommended added condition, and I'm not sure exactly where in this list you would like to see that.
Staff would be fine at condition 12.
12. That's the motion.
Second. Second.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Drobish.
Aye.
Member Friend.
Yes.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member List.
Aye.
And Chair Lowry.
Aye.
Thank you. I read quite a bit.
That brings us to our next agenda item at 255 Placerville Drive, SPR 2014-06, Sierra Central Credit Union. It's a public hearing to consider the application of Sierra Central Credit Union for site plan review SPR 2014-06 to allow the demolition of the existing two-story, 7,000 square foot office building located centrally on the subject site and to construct a new 4,000 square foot commercial building to house the Sierra Central Credit Union on the site, complete with well as parking, landscaping, and related features. APN 325-120-47. Staff is recommending that this project be deemed categorically exempt under CEQA. Planning Commission action is final unless appealed in writing to the city clerk within 10 calendar days. Project planner is Andrew Painter, and take it away, Andrew.
Yeah, you got me again here. This site's located at the intersection of Placerville Drive, Easy Street, and Green Valley Road. It's also located within what's called the Placerville Drive Development and Implementation Plan area, or the PDDIP plan. That plan sets forth streetscape and building design features as a general guideline for the Placerville Drive corridor between Highway 50 West and Highway 50 East along its full length. The site is zoned commercial, and the intent of that zone is to promote light retail sales and services, entertainment, and other similar activities to serve the residents of the community. Surrounding the site are properties zoned for commercial uses, as well as an existing multifamily duplex located across Easy Street and northwest of the site. Once again, as Chair Lowry summarized, tonight's request would involve the demolition of an existing 7,000 square foot office building and the construction of a 4,000 square foot office building for Sierra Central Credit Union, as well as parking, landscaping, and other related site features. These site features include retaining walls that will be built to shore up the proposed relocation of the building on the site from its current location. Like, once again, the building's going to be demolished, but the new building would be built in the southeast corner of the site, adjacent to Easy Street and the intersection of it with Green Valley Road. The driveway that's currently on Easy Street will be removed and a new one installed to the back of the building, northwesterly along Easy Street, to provide access to the rear of the building. There's also an existing driveway encroachment that can be accessed off of Placerville Drive, and that is to remain in use during operation of the facility. New split-face block retaining walls will be proposed, as I mentioned, in the southerly corner, and these are to support the new building. The new building design is considered contemporary. Features and materials chosen include metal roofing, metal siding, lap veneer, and variable elevations appear appropriate to the site and surrounding Placerville Drive area. Some of these material types were used, were approved by the commission on the Boys and Girls Club, facility, which is to be built further down Green Valley Road from the site. There will be the veneer of the building will include a river rock type of a veneer feature on the building. River washed stone, I believe, is how it's described. Staff believes that type of stone is really more applicable to what you would find down in the valley. Therefore, staff recommends a more stacked stone, which you'd find quite common here in the city. As I mentioned, the business customers would access the building from the rear parking area, and this is due to the relocation of that parking is due to the interior needs and use by the financial credit union. A pedestrian orientation toward Placerville Drive was not provided on the site originally, as you know from when it's 49er credit union days. Staff did consult with the applicant and has required, and they have provided you information as to pedestrian improvements that will now be built along Easy Street and connect a brief section of Green Valley Road to where it intersects with Placerville Drive and Raylora Drive. So pedestrian orientation and pedestrian access would be provided with this request. The orientation of the building is, again, pushed towards the street, which is different than its predecessor. And this type of characteristic is a design feature that is encouraged within the Placerville Drive Development and Implementation Plan that was adopted by City Council back in 2009. The site plan also includes the graphics for and elevation showing signage for the site, and signage includes a master sign plan request, and this request is before you because the applicant is requesting the deviations from the sign requirements of the city as to the number of signs that can be permitted on a site, as well as the square foot area for wall signs. The two sign types that are provided in your elevations and in your plan sets for your review include a ground sign, which would be built out in the city's right-of-way, that kind of no man's land between Placerville Drive and the current property line for the credit union site. The dimensions of that sign are in the staff report. It will and does utilize features that are common from the building in terms of material, colors, and architectural style. The wall signage proposed are 3 wall signs proposed. Each have 69 square feet of sign area. 2 are shown on the south elevation and 1 on the north elevation. Total sign area for the wall signage is 207 square feet, and the total aggregate area of all site signage, including the ground sign is a total of 217 square feet. The applicant was requested and did provide some substantiation for the additional signage needed, as well as the additional sign area. And it is the site's unique relationship to the three streets that are proximity to it, Placerville Drive, Easy Street, and Green Valley Road, that they need additional signage for, to serve their business needs and to help provide and highlight the entrance to the site, which is, again, at the rear of the building. After speaking with the applicant or discussing with the applicant through some correspondence, it is now the intent of the applicant to only place one sign facing the Placerville Drive elevation and relocate one of the wall signs that are currently shown in that elevation and move it to the westerly elevation, which would face the Easy Street and Green Valley Road view shed. And this would help with building identification. Staff certainly agrees with that thought and would provide, you know, the vehicle traveler who's traveling on Green Valley Road to easily find this location. The third wall sign that faces to the northerly direction, again servicing the parking lot area, once again is also 69 square feet in area. Staff does not feel that this sign is adequately in scale for that elevation to serve really a very small parking lot. There are other provisions in the code that would allow window signage to serve as identification as to where the entrance to the building is located, and provided that that window signage does not exceed 25% of the window, they would be exempt from the sign regulations. Therefore, staff is not suggesting the Planning Commission permit a third sign. If the third sign were eliminated from the sign plan, then the maximum area proposed for wall signage would be well within the maximum permitted under the city's sign regulations, which is the amount of sign area is analyzed in the staff report, and it relates to business frontage. If you've got further questions on that, I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. In terms of the quantity of signs, the city code permits for properties that have corner lots in commercial zones, they are permitted to have more than one wall sign, and the code would allow for that. The third sign, again, is the one in question from staff's perspective, as well as the sign area for that. The proposed sign structure, once again, which is out in what staff has called no man's land, it is in the city's right-of-way. It's, again, that area, triangular-shaped land between Placerville Drive pavement and the property in question tonight. Once again, the design of that structure does and is compatible with the architectural style of the building, the colors, what have you. Staff does have some pause to review this in terms of the scale of it and its location, proximity to the street, and it's staff's perspective that the intent of this sign could still be conveyed adequately if it was scaled a little bit smaller than it is. At approximately 25% would be sufficient in staff size. Staff finds that the landscape plan submitted meets the types and percentages and varieties that are consistent with the city's native and drought-tolerant species. The landscape details, however, within the right-of-way adjacent to their ground sign are not particular enough and complete enough for the city to make a recommendation on. It is staff's recommendation to the commission that a more detailed landscape plan for that area be submitted to the city and approved by city staff. Exterior lighting for the site proposes contemporary parking lot and wall-mounted fixtures. The lighting plan demonstrates conformity with city regulations for light intensity, mounting height, full cutoff shielding, etc. The fixtures do appear to complement the site and the proposed architectural design. Staff finds that the project is categorically exempt pursuant to section 15302, in that this section of CEQA does permit the replacement and reconstruction of buildings involving an existing structure in which the new structure will have substantially the same purpose and capacity as the structure being replaced. As we mentioned, the request tonight would be to demolish an existing 7,000 square foot financial building, replace it with a 4,000 square foot financial building. The staff therefore believes that this categorical exemption would apply. Public notice for this request was published and mailed to property owners in the project vicinity, and no comments have thus far been received on this request. Staff recommends the Planning Commission make the general plan findings A through C and Roman numeral 2 on page 5 and 6 of staff's report. Make the site plan review findings A through C on page 6. And conditionally approve the request, site plan review 2014-06, the request by Sierra Central Credit Union for a 4,000 square foot financial building, including landscaping and lighting, located at 225 Placerville Drive, subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 38, or as amended by the commission. That concludes my staff report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Planner Painter.
Need a drink of water.
Okay, for my colleagues here and for staff, it's been about 4 months since I've had any stick time in this seat, so I'm writing myself a little order of march as a reminder. So I'd like to propose that first we see if the commissioners have any questions of staff. We ask the applicant to come up to answer any questions that staff might, or the commission might pose. Take some public input, bring it back so that the commissioners can pose any other questions that have occurred to them, and from then we'll roll into a motion. Do I have consent with that?
That's a good point.
Okay. Yeah.
I would just note, Mr. Chairman, from the technical perspective, that when you bring the applicant up, you're opening the public hearing. So the public hearing has two components, hearing from the applicant, then hearing from the audience.
Okay.
Just
Okay, that's fine.
because then you have to then close the public hearing.
Right, right. I just make the distinction that the speaking to the applicant is kind of a Q&A, and taking in from the public, it's kind of unidirectional.
I have a question of staff. Trying to locate the height of the retaining wall that looks like it goes at least on the south side and portions of the east and west side. How tall is that retaining wall going to be? And I guess it's this split face.
Yeah, I can research that for you. Repeat the location again that you're,
Well, just to me, it looks
the north?
like it starts here, comes around all the way to here.
Oh, okay, it would be in front of the new structure. Sure, I'll get back to you
I
on
just
that.
want to know if it's going to be really imposing and we need to require ground cover to grow over it, or just how imposing is it going to be?
Yeah, give me a second to research that for you.
Okay. And then another question, that little triangle of land in the front, that belongs to the city? Is that right? The no man's land? So if city code doesn't allow off-site advertising, how can we allow a monument sign there?
Well, the city does have an encroachment permit process in which those are commonly handled. And what that would mean is that if the city were to extend that encroachment permit, it would allow the operator of that use that's adjacent to the site, and that's one of the key provisions, that yes, it technically is off-site, but it's pertinent to the use that's adjacent to where the sign would be located. So there is that connection. Number two, an encroachment permit is revocable, and the city would revoke that permit and require the property owner or the owner of that sign, the use, to remove it upon the decree of the city for use of that right-of-way, whether it's for road widening, whether it's for utility placement, whether it's for things of that nature. So it is really A short term, I guess, would be a way, because the city eventually would have either use of that right-of-way, or maybe we don't. But at this point, due to the Placerville Drive plan, there is an expectation that some of that property, some of that area could be utilized for the full build-out of that street at the PDDIP plan cross-section.
So another question is then, tonight, as written, should we just eliminate that monument sign for now until they come back with a request to do it the right way? Because I don't see how the Planning Commission can grant a code violation of off-site advertising.
I'm not sure I understand the position of the member, but
Well, per the sign code, you cannot have off-site advertising.
Staff does not consider this to be off-site advertising sign. We consider this to be within the city right-of-way adjoining the property, and so it's different than off-site advertising. Off-site advertising, for an example, would be if they were proposing to put a sign up on the adjoining piece of property that is privately held. That would be off-site advertising. And then the city would have no control on copy. It would then be, in fact, a billboard. So they could decide that, well, we're not going to advertise what we're advertising. We're going to put something else on the sign. Therefore, that's primarily reason why the city doesn't allow off-site advertising sign, because they're, in essence, billboards. So in this case, the code does allow for the city to issue an encroachment permit to allow a sign to encroach into a city right-of-way. So this is perfectly legal. It's not a violation.
But as written, have they filed everything they need to file for that encroachment?
What's before you is total signage, and so we're looking at the amount of sign that they're proposing for their facility in total. And so therefore, when they get their approval, yes, they're going to have to pull an encroachment permit and probably a building permit for the sign. They're going to have to pull a demo permit to remove the building. The demo permit isn't before you. The building permit isn't before you. They'll have to pull a building permit to build a facility. So what's before you then is basically the entitlement for the proposed use and the site plan and the colors and the elevation and everything else that's in the staff report. They'll still have to come in and follow up and actually do the demolition, do the construction, and everything else.
Is there any other site in the city where the city allows individual business to use city land for advertising?
I'm not aware of that.
It
I'd
seems a
have to
little
research that. Maybe
playing
repeat the
favorites.
question. I missed the question.
Is there any other place in the city where a individual business for profit gets to use city land for advertising?
Yes, in fact, to the south and west of this location, all the lollipop signs that you see, well, maybe not all, that's quite a catchphrase, but quite a few that are on the west side of Placerville Drive as you head towards US 50. A large percentage of those are in the city's right-of-way, and we have encroachment permits
Okay,
for their removal should we need that additional land.
okay, and so it's a temporary thing? Okay.
Any other, do you have a question?
So a couple of quick questions, Andrew. First of all, based upon your discussion of the sign component, has the applicant then agreed to abandon a sign on the north elevation?
They have not,
They have not, but you've proposed, you've suggested that to them.
and condition the project accordingly.
And condition the project therefore, so that's up for discussion. Alternatively, they could make it smaller to get within the footage.
Right, and the commission would have to make a finding that that additional sign, that third sign, is warranted based on some aspects of the site, building needs, business needs.
Okay,
That's a requirement under the code.
all right. Looking at the elevations and in the discussion about the exterior components, I'm a little bit confused as to the use of what's labeled as S1, the basalite, versus S2, which was the Yakima River rock, the stone. And I see a lot of S1 around here, but I see almost no I haven't been able to find the S2, frankly, and I'm really not a fan of the basalite material. In your staff report, you suggested a treatment that would not look like a river rock, that would be more like the lower elevation Folsom, frankly, but more of a stack stone component. Have you had that discussion with the applicant?
You know, I think at this point it'd be useful to get the applicant and his party to this discussion.
Okay, so just one more, before we do that, I'm still directing my questions to staff, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. So I don't see the S2, and my question then to staff is that your understanding where what looks like on the elevation to be a stone structure, just the visual looks like stone to me. Do you know what it's planned to be, and have you had that conversation with the applicant? What that visual treatment's supposed to be?
Not at that specificity, no.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, now we'll have the applicant come up, but I did want to ask staff the question. I appreciate the indulgence.
I'd like to invite the applicant to the podium.
Hi, I'm Corinda MacDonald. I'm with Borges Architectural Group, and I'm the applicant on this. So, go ahead and ask me which item would you like to discuss first? Signage, stone?
I'll yield to the chairman.
Well, I'd like to get Mike's questions answered while they're still fresh in
Okay.
all of our minds.
So let's start with the signage. That's probably the easier one. Staff has made a suggestion and also conditioned a project on the elimination of the sign on the north aspect of the proposed facility. And just like to get your take on that, your response, I guess.
Sure. Sierra Central Credit Union and I have discussed that condition, and we really feel that some sort of signage on the north face of the building facing the parking lot would be appropriate, but we can understand the concerns about scale. So we would like to propose reducing the size of that signage on the north face to approximately 25 square feet, which would bring the total area of signage below the amount allowed by code. So the only thing that we're asking is that we are allowed to have a third sign as opposed to the two.
Okay, and we'll have to go back to staff on that, make a note, go back to staff. Then can you talk a little bit about the exterior treatments with regards to the basalite and what's in the illustration as S1? I can't find S2 anywhere, frankly, but
Okay.
I see a whole lot of S1.
Okay.
And the basalite would be this material, which just strikes me, and I don't like to comment on folks' projects, but I'm going to comment on the project.
Okay.
This just strikes me as extremely harsh and industrial and doesn't really seem to fit in. And so the rock or these softer colors look better. Mm-hmm. But there's no way for me to discern from what's presented here what we're going to wind up with.
Okay. So currently proposed on the building is no basalite. Right now, on the actual building, it would be stone veneer. And by the way, we are perfectly accepting of a change in these to a stacked stone if that's preferable to planning and the commission. And the only locations where the basalite split-face CMU is proposed is on our trash enclosure and on the retaining walls at the corner of the building there. Which those would also be screened somewhat by landscaping, as you can see from the landscape plan.
I want to ask those questions. Okay, that's really helpful. And I appreciate the concurrence with the stack stone. That'd be really helpful. Do you have something that's going to help me?
The height of the retaining walls were covered in C1.
Oh, sheet C1.
PW stands for top of the wall, equal to bottom of the wall.
Okay.
I don't need to read into the record, but
Yeah, that'd be great.
How tall are those retaining walls?
So they vary anywhere from about 3 feet to about 5 or 6 feet, keeping in mind that at the corner where we have the steepest area, it's a 5-foot and a 4-foot wall, but they're separated, so it's more of a terraced look, so you don't have just one flat wall. That way we can put some landscape in between and soften it as it comes down at its highest point.
And are these just blocks, and will they be installed vertically, or will they taper back, stacked?
I think at this point that it was more of a vertical installation, given the location of the building on site and trying to get the access from Easy Street at a level location.
So anything over 30 inches in a vertical would have to have a fence on top of it also?
Only if there's access by pedestrians or there's a means of people being there. This is just in the landscape area.
Okay.
So we don't have any walkways against these retaining walls.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. List, Mr. Russell?
Yeah, just a couple quick.
Can-
Whoops,
Can I
sorry.
make a comment back now at this point? So I wanted to say thank you for all the hard work on this, and we concur with most of the conditions of approval, but there was one that I wanted to mention, item number 18, the walkway from, we are expanding and providing a sidewalk along the frontage of our property along Easy Street, and condition 18 has the walkway then extending from our property to the walkway on the corner. And in previous discussions, it had been listed as AC paving, and I noticed now that it had changed to concrete. And I just wondered, given the nature of that it's unknown is exactly what's going to happen in that frontage, if that extension could continue to be AC paving as previously discussed.
Looks to me like, I just fill some time while we're. Looks to me like there is pedestrian access along the Easy Street, so the west, the south, and the east side. Is that the case?
Yeah, there's pedestrian access along Easy Street. Part of what we're being required to do is widen Easy Street to a minimum of 24 feet and provide the 4-foot walk per the standards for, this is a private street. So right now, we've proposed a concrete walk along the side of Easy Street there. At the end of our property line, we had previously discussed that changing to AC paving walk to continue down to the existing crosswalk at Placerville Drive. So I just noticed in the condition it had changed to concrete. And
After discussing with other staff members here, the AC would be fine on
Okay.
both applications.
okay,
Yeah,
that was our only.
okay. And we'd be happy to make that change formally. And
Just a question on the open ditch that is in between Easy Street and your property. What's going to happen with that? Will it be culverted and filled over?
At this point, I don't believe we're proposing to culvert and fill it over, but part of our proposal is actually to landscape this kind of no man's land. Sierra Central Credit Union would like to improve the look of this. Right now it's just dirt. So that's kind of part and parcel to it. It looks to be sort of a swale right now, and if treated with landscaping and cleaned up, it could look quite nice. So that's our proposal at this point, is to clean that whole frontage area up and get landscaping out there so that it's a more inviting area.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you. The first one, how far forward from the existing building to the front of the new building, approximately?
Let's see, there's a driveway and parking stalls, so I'm guessing about 40 feet?
40?
I'm guessing about 40 feet.
Okay. I have a concern with utility wires.
Okay.
I wrote down here that it would kind of like putting a mustache on a beauty queen. You have a beautiful building, and here you're going to have these massive wires going across in front. Had that been taken into consideration on the placement of the building?
It has. There's several reasons why we place the building in this way. Part of it is to help with the access of the site. If any of you have ever come off of Easy Street and tried to go up that driveway, it's not very functional.
Right.
And so we were moving the driveway farther back on the site such that it's closer to the grade of the street so that you can actually get in and out of there. Additionally, we wanted to bring the building forward to make it more prominent on the street, to make it align, make your nice street frontage. And in regards to the power lines, that is being discussed right now. We've met with PG&E and we've met with AT&T. There hasn't been a decision yet made if or what pieces may or may not be placed underground, but the owner, it's at least being talked about and looked at. And so we're waiting for some estimates from some of the utilities to see what it would take.
Yeah, it looks like they've just thrown utilities up there over the last few years, and
Yeah.
it looks bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
And put a
yeah.
beautiful building behind it just blows me away. The second question I have is on the signs on the walls. Describe the lighting that you'll have on those signs.
Right now, we were talking about halo illuminated signing so that they would be the solid letters set away from the wall with the glow behind them.
Okay. That's all I have.
Just a couple of comments. I'm glad you're willing to change the stone siding. When I think of River Rock, I think of the River City Bank downtown, which I really don't like. So I think you're going to have a much nicer looking building there with that. I also was concerned about the power line. I assume someday, hopefully within the next 15 or 20 years, that whole street will be redone and the power and the utilities will be undergrounded. So maybe this is something that we can live with for a while. And I know putting that stuff underground just for a short distance in front of your building would be really expensive, but if you're willing to do it, that would be nice. I assume the trees on the west end along Easy Street, the liquid ambers and the one pine are gonna go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that they need to be demoed so that we can actually
Right,
get the driveway through there at a reasonable grade.
I like the fact that you've moved the building frontward and have most of the parking at the rear. I think that's a real benefit visually from Placerville Drive. The one thing I guess that no one has spoken to yet, it was mentioned in the staff report somewhat, is the architecture itself, the roof line, those two slanted shed roof sort of things. I'm not fond of it, the way it looks. I don't know what your thinking is or the architect's thinking is or whatever, but we went to great lengths to make Home Depot knuckle under and do some really innovative things, and they have a tower. You're calling this the tower at the one end, and they have a thing at the front corner that is essentially a tower, but it has a very small gable roof. And would you consider gable roof those two areas instead of having slanted helicopter pads?
Well, the thinking behind the design is we were thinking of mining buildings and sort of that mining history that's up here in the Placerville area. And a lot of times out at old mining buildings, you see the metal siding, you actually see a lot of shed roofs. And so that's what we were playing on. As to redesigning the roof, I would have to defer and confer with the rest of the team.
I understand.
That's a pretty hard thing to just.
I'm not opposed to shed roofs, but usually they come off of another wall. They're not perched on top of a building, as an element all on its own. And if this is the way it ends up with this architecture, would you consider, since it couldn't be seen from any place, putting solar panels up there?
I don't know. It might be something that we could consider or plan for in terms of at least providing conduits and such,
That was
so
an
that in
idea
the
I had.
future, it would be easy for the for future solar panels to be installed. I'm not sure if the applicant's ready to commit to solar panels at this point, but it's definitely something that can be talked about and that we can make provisions for. I know oftentimes if we add a circuit to the switchboard that's specifically dedicated for future solar panels and a conduit, that certainly would make it much easier in the future to add them.
Well, in fact, I had a conversation with staff today about that very thing, about at least setting up so it could be done. It doesn't have to be done now, but instead of tearing into the building later, if you choose to, have the utility part, already in place. The landscaping, I'm a kind of a landscaping nut, and it would have been nice if you had quantities shown on your landscape thing. I had to do some counting and looking, and I figured it out. And I think you have a really nice selection of plants.
Thank you.
Of course, we didn't have an irrigation plan, and your note says that you'll have an automatic system that would be compliant with state. Generally we see more of an irrigation plan, and with the if we're entering the 4th year of a drought, we're inclined to be in favor of drip systems over spray heads. And your comment here, I have no idea what you intend, whether it's going to be pop-up heads or drip systems or bubblers or whatever,
So the landscape architect is sitting here in the audience,
Okay.
and he is whispering drip to me.
Okay,
So,
okay. So
Yeah.
there wouldn't be any pop-up heads or spray heads at all?
The only place there might be is in that no man's land out front, because it's so wide, to install drip through that area might not make sense, but it'd be very high efficient nozzles to go through there.
yeah, I'll let you.
Kevin Leamy from Leamy Land Group. We around the building and on most of the site, because of the widths of those planters, we got to go drip. It's just the only way to go at this time, especially with the drought that's going on. The only place we might consider doing some pop-ups would be out in the no man's land, as we're calling it, out in front, because it's such a wide area, to maybe go with some of the high efficient rotary nozzles or something along that line. But we're also hoping to use, as discussed earlier, native plants in those areas, so that would probably, after a few years, be able to turn that irrigation off and just let it after it has naturalized.
Well, drip systems are a lot easier to turn off someday, and you don't have the investment of pipes underground and all this and that. If you're going to have native plants out there or shrubbery or whatever, and they're 3 or 4 feet on centers, I think a drip system would really be the only way to go. And then when it's not necessary in 2 or 3 years, you just turn it off. That's my preference. I think maybe at some point before you issue building permits and all that, that the staff, at least the staff, should see an irrigation plan of some kind.
Oh, they will. There'd be a full construction document set that they'll get irrigation plans in the whole bit.
And I would urge that you at least consider drip system everywhere.
Okay, will do.
That's just, I've been using drip for years. I put in 50 acres of grapes, and I know a lot about drip systems, so, but I would hope that staff would concur and keep an eye on that. But
Okay.
overall, I think it's a good project. If you're the landscape architect, I like your plant list. And,
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to,
We'd like to address a statement earlier made by staff, clarification regarding the sidewalk, just so that we are understanding what portion would be AC, asphalted concrete, and what would be concrete itself. So I'll turn this over to City Engineer Rebecca Neves.
Good evening. It was my understanding that the sidewalk in question was the sidewalk located on Easy Street, which in our opinion is more of a permanent improvement, permanent installation. Therefore, I apologize, I'm a little bit more inclined to keep it as concrete versus AC. In my mind, AC for a sidewalk is more of an interim, temporary condition, And with those kinds of improvements, we really should probably lean towards the more permanent solution of concrete.
Okay, I'd like to hear from the applicant. Would you come to the podium again so we can get you on the record? Great, thank you.
Do I need to reintroduce myself again?
No.
Okay, so, can I come over and point at your site plan? So, the portion along here, we propose to be concrete along our property line, and the walkway to be installed on the public portion to be AC paving. That's what we wanted to clarify, that this was, okay,
Yeah, that was our intent as well.
okay.
As long as the engineer is happy, I'm happy. Okay, so thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
At this time, I'd like to ask any interested members of the public to come to the podium and provide input they care to.
Chris Payne, Diamond Springs. Earlier, I didn't also say that I'm owner of 327 Main Street, Placerville. So I definitely love Placerville, and I love what you guys have done up to tonight. I don't know what you're going to do yet. Just a few comments. Full disclosure, I was a former 49er Credit Union customer, and I am currently a Sierra Central customer. And so I do really care about the demolition portion of this to be approved tonight. Under no circumstances, I don't want anything that I say to stop that from occurring. It's an important milestone. The other part related to comments that have already been made by you related to the project, I do also have a problem with the towers. I'm a visual person, and my wife isn't. So this project, as defined by the elevations, obviously, it affects me more than it would her. I believe the color palette is the right choice. Until tonight, I didn't know what it was, but I'm satisfied with the color palettes. I think it's a good choice by the architect, and I'm satisfied with most of the building elevation, with the exception of the towers. And the reason why I have a problem with the towers is because since I am a visual person and I will be using this facility for my banking, I want something that's going to be pleasing to my eye, not necessarily pleasing to the architect's eye. Meaning, if they live here and they're going to bank in this facility, then fine. Do it what you want. I'm just another person. But since I'm a customer who's going to use the facility, and that architect is not going to be using this facility unless I'm told otherwise tonight, then I want it to look the way I find it pleasing, not the way the architect finds it pleasing. The second thing is that I went around on Placerville Drive to decisions that have been made by the city related to Home Depot. It's already been stated that this is a landmark facility for Placerville. This Sierra Central should be similar. And in my mind, the elevations are not acceptable. The second thing, you've also got All-Star Rents. You've got Golden Plaza. You've got Back to Health Chiropractic. You've got Precision Eye Care. You guys have, the city has done a great job of being able to have nice facilities, pleasing to the eye. And in this particular case, I'm looking for, instead of towers, because I'm involved with the El Dorado County Historical Society, but not representing them, I'm looking for water towers. I'm looking for barnwood. I'm looking for stone. I'm looking for natural colors. I'm looking for things that are pleasing to my eye. And so tonight, I hope, because it's been brought up about the question of these towers, that you will go with my concerns, not the architect's concerns. Thank you.
Good evening, Kirk Smith of Placerville. By way of introduction, my concern is understandably with the bias of properties that are on the other side of Ray Lawyer Drive and Placerville Drive, because our family owns the triangle on the other side of no man's land. We call it Spanky's because that's the property and business that's anchored that parcel for some time. My parents bought it in the 1950s when it was an abandoned pear orchard. And when Tom Rayleigh, and we once had Rayleigh's grocery store that he started, but it was before Rayleigh's and a lot of other developments. Our parents were sued a couple years ago for ADA compliance issues. So we have to make major changes to that complex. So when I look at your project from these folks, I envision what we have coming up. Now, it's not before you tonight, but I have photographs I can show you of what our plans are. And we've worked for several years to come up with some designs like what Bruce Wharton has in his complex over in Fowler Way. And I have some photographs I can show you, sets for you, and the like. But it replicates the kind of 1800s. And we had in mind to do this with wanting to set a standard that might inspire others to do the same thing. At 92, my mother really didn't think she'd be embarking on that kind of project. So you have to imagine as you go down Ray Lawyer Drive on right, you have something that's dramatically different from anything that exists there now. It's certainly not along the lines of what the Fassinis have, that 1930s structure, and it's not like the historic properties that you have on the fairgrounds. This is pretty much a hodgepodge and almost anything goes. But there's a number of design proposals here that do concern me. Some are consistent with what Chris Payne's just described. And that is the towers. It's just so much different. And this no man's land, that's been used for Christmas trees every year. My mother's donated a number of those giant Christmas trees. We've got 6 left if anybody out there wants them for November. Just give you a heads up, free. And the idea that, okay, this has been done before, and you got a bunch of lollipop signs down there. No, I'm not sure you ever have done anything quite like that. And when you say it's temporary and it can be revoked later on, you have to ask yourself, is that likely to happen? Because the argument would be it's grandfathered in and we put all this kind of money in. The other thing is you have to look at what your decisions have been like in the past and see, can you reconcile those past decisions with now? I know I heard on the council, Patty Borelli note that people don't really use pole signs anymore, a lot of signage. And to illustrate that, when you were talking about Phillips Court, hey, I grew up here. I didn't know which property we were talking about. I passed it to get here. But on the internet, using my phone, I got 36 photographs from 2 different websites that gave me a vivid description not only where the property is, but exactly what you were talking about. Frankly, folks, that's how we find most places these days. We go to the internet. We use Easy Navigator. I've got 5 apps on here that'll get me to where I want to go. It's not really science. And if you really do what you're describing because of the code allows you to do it, remember, it's not just what you're allowed to do. It's what's appropriate within the discretion that you have. Because if we do the same thing on the other side, using the ordinances that were described, we've got a triangular piece. Imagine the kind of signage we could get away with. We don't want to do that. We want to have something that would be, you know, setting a standard for, you know, for people to come. Again, absent the photographs, it's, this stuff looks like plaster rock. I'll just have a set for staff. And I've got some more. Do you mind if I pass them up to you? Welcome to you. It's not before you. Our project isn't before you. What is before you is this project. I'm just asking you to consider 2 things that are dramatically different. And that would, again, it's consistent with what Chris has described as he talks about the towers. So here's a set for you. Thank you. And again, we wanted to do that because we thought it set a standard that maybe others would be inspired by. We're not a corporation, we're not a credit union, we're not loaded with money. And frankly, we paid for that property off a long time ago. So one of our options is we could close it if we don't get the court order extended to make the changes in time and afford to hold on to it for a while, because it's been paid for a long time. We had some changes that we were going to do that were like Band-Aid things, but this is the most expensive ADA litigation in the county because it requires regrading the parking lot, jackhammering out the sidewalks, changing the configuration of the roof because you can't get a wheelchair through there, lots of stuff. So we came up with dramatic changes with Bruce Wharton, the contractor, and this is just going to be dramatically different. When you talk about no man's land, I think that's a really serious precedent to establish. Yes?
Do you have any more comments on your aesthetic evaluation of the building at hand?
On the aesthetics issue.
I mean, we've already heard that you don't like the building as currently proposed. Do I understand you correctly?
In essence, yes.
Okay.
Because I think you have to think about the whole landscape. As you go through from Highway 50 around to where you have the Home Depot, what kind of structure are you going to be looking at? In between, you've got Bassini's. That's 1930s.
Right. We talked about that.
Okay.
Okay. Well, great. I appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Sue.
Sue Taylor. I know these guys have worked really hard on this, and sometimes it's hard to get critiqued, but I hope that they will listen to the community and a lot of our feelings about this building. There's a group of us that worked with the Shingle Springs community, and we posted about 60 pictures of what people liked and didn't like, and we had them evaluate them.
So is this specifically in relationship to the project
Yes.
under discussion?
It will be, yes.
Okay.
I'm going to tie
Looking
it right
forward
in.
to it. Thank
It'll
you.
be good. Okay. So it was the community, there's about 110 people that took the survey. And most of them picked the really western-looking buildings, like the Vertanen's building, which you mentioned. And it's ironic, the building that's existing there, if you took it and added a lot of these facades, these got the most votes, was the things that were more western feel. The reason I bring this up, we showed 2 buildings that were similar to this. It's a very contemporary type design that you see becoming more common. We showed those, and they had a total of 6 and 9 votes. 6 votes, 9 votes. For those type of slanted roofs, they didn't like this. And I almost compare those to, we call them the Jetson buildings in Cameron Park. It's the same roof line. And you can't even, they don't even show their building online because it's not so pretty. And we were trying to get a picture of it, and this is the best we could do, but the roofs are similar. And you can graphically paint, that almost looks like a watercolor, so it makes it look kind of pretty. But when you actually build these things, this building's been vacant about since the time it was built, and it's not attractive, and everybody in that area resents it. And it's like a sore thumb that's happened to Cameron Park that everybody knows that. So I'm just bringing the point up about the slanted roofs. I call them like you said, a helicopter pad. It just seems like they're landing. I don't see those as 1980s. I don't see those at mining. I think there's some elements in this that they were getting there, but I think you have to go back to the gable roofs. And if a shed dormer is something that doesn't stick out there by itself, it comes off of the roof in a different form. And so this, in my mind, sticks out from the rest of the street and all of the buildings that exist along there and the things and efforts that have happened in the past. So, and the other issue I was going to bring up, the sidewalk. We keep improving or updating sidewalks, and they're very white and they're very yellow with the grate, and they stand out like a sore thumb on the corners. So if you are doing a sidewalk, I would hope that, can you dull the color so it doesn't look like a neon sign on the ground? And maybe everything we're doing is becoming more industrial and more sharp. And we keep talking about having design standards so that when people come here, they know what they need to do, but yet we keep allowing more things to get built that don't feel right. So I think that was about it. And they brought up that they'll still have to go to the demo permit and the other type of permits, but I think once you approve this here, then I think all those things are by right, if I'm not, is that not correct? That once you approve this project, then they can just go apply for the permit, and that's a ministerial action after it leaves here?
Well, I would defer to staff on that, but it would seem that approving this project, the next logical step would be, as you've discussed. I think, are you, well,
Well, it was kind of mentioned that don't worry because they still have to go through all these permits, but I think once you approve it, right now it's kind of discretionary, but once it's approved, it kind of loses that public purview.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're probably quite right about that.
Okay, so I'm just, like I said, I'm a building designer. I go through this all along the coast. I put my plans on the property for a month that people critique before it comes forward to a planning commission. And so I know the feeling of having this stuff talked about, but I would hope they would listen to, the community's not going to like this with those roofs sloped the way they are on the top. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. I recall being told, thanks, John, I see him. I recall being told that the design elements of Shingle Spring Subaru, with its long sloping shed roofs, were intended to reflect the surrounding topography of the foothills. The other comment regarding our sidewalks and that sort of thing, we're probably aware that sidewalks at intersections now require curb cuts for mobility impaired folks. That blazing yellow nubbly stuff is there for visually impaired folks so they don't walk into the street. So we find ourselves making on a continuing process of making reasonable accommodations for other less able citizens.
Hi, my name's Steve No. Just comment on the last speaker. Unless somebody has a petition, they don't speak for a whole community on whether they like or don't like any particular item. So take it for what it's worth.
Thank you. Can we have...
Can you, I've been mocked after I speak twice now, and he didn't speak to the item, so I'm protesting that because it's happened like 3 times now, so I object to that type of comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide input on this matter? Okay, that sounds great. Then I think we're back to where, as I earlier alluded to, the commission members probably have more questions of staff.
Mr. Chairman, I think maybe the easiest question might be dealing with the signage component. So I'd like to take that issue back to staff. So, Andrew, I'm going to go back to page 4 of the staff report, and this deals with the staff recommendation of the abandonment of the sign that if I understand correctly, is on the north elevation. And the applicant has indicated that they were willing to put a reduced sign that would get them within the square footage allowable by the ordinance. But with regards to the finding, I think that you indicated we would have to make as to why the sign itself was justified. If I understand the site plan correctly, the north elevation is not visible from Placerville Drive or from Easy Street, is it? It's facing off back the other direction, correct?
Yes, in a northeast westerly.
Northeasterly.
North. It's kind of odd that the street.
Actually, it's the corner of the building is true north, and it's been kind of a challenge to figure out. So here's what I'm going to suggest this, that we accept the applicant's compromise for a reduction in the sign and submit that, that their argument that having some signage that indicates the entrance is warranted. And given that this elevation is not visible from the street, and the sign ordinance was, at least in part, designed to achieve some sense of consistency and balance within the community with signage, that makes it consistent with it. It certainly is not violating the sign ordinance because it's not visible. And I wouldn't have a problem then allowing them to keep that sign with the reduction in the square footage. I'd like to get staff's response to that.
Oh, I guess my immediate response would be I addressed an opportunity or an option for them to utilize to help facilitate a customer who parks in the parking lot to find the entrance to the building. Second of all, there is a second option. We have what's called incidental signage or directional signage, which would be not advertising per se, but the words entrance or business entrance in a location that could be visible from the parking lot, which would serve the needs and intent of what I'm hearing from the applicant as a way for a customer to find the door to get inside the business. And the need for 69 square feet or some modification of that square footage, I suppose the commission could make that finding that it is needed, but in staff's opinion, I don't believe it's warranted in this location, even irregardless of whether or not it's visible from the street, because the intent, as stated by the applicant, is for the visitor who enters the parking lot. So it's really for their view shed, not for anyone else's. So I guess if the city were to acquiesce on one of these points, would be to reduce it in such a capacity to meet at least the maximum sign area that would be permitted under the code.
Okay.
But in staff's perspective and request would be that that sign is not needed.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm just going to throw this out, and Commissioner Russell, you were the first to kind of bring people's attention to the architectural aspects of the building. I'll say, first of all, that actually, I want to ask staff a question. With regards to the Home Depot project, which, still to this day, I think remains just a fantastic example of collaboration between the applicant and the city, I don't believe that those design elements were designed here at the commission. Those were worked out with staff and the applicant prior to them coming to commission for review. And I was wondering what level of deliberation and interactions, staff may have had on this, and that's a rhetorical question. I won't ask you to answer that, but it seems when it gets to us at this level, it becomes a little bit of a challenge for us to start making changes to it. Having said that, and the other piece I'll add to it, I think that there are a lot of visual elements here that really do help soften the tower component. But now putting that aside, I do think there could be room for improvement. And I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but right now my inclination would be to request that the applicant take this back and work with staff on some alternatives. I'm just not, I can barely write my name on the ground with a stick, and I'm the last person you want drawing anything. But I do see the point, and I think that some suggestions could be made, and so that's just from my fellow commissioners' perspective. That's kind of where I'm at with regards to this.
I have a question on the signs on the south elevation. It's showing 2 wall signs. Is one an alternate to the other, or are they planning on 2?
Well, one of the elevations that has the 2 wall signs, after speaking with the applicant, they would like to relocate or place a similar size sign facing the Easy Street, Green Valley Road elevation. I'm not looking at the elevation in front of me, so I forgot which one it is, but it's the one facing that direction. Sure. And that's to allow the visibility of the building and business identification for those travelers along Green Valley Road.
And
staff supports that.
The public comment that nowadays we use our navigation in our phones to get us where we go is making these signs reduced. I would see, you have basically 3 exposures, your east, your west, and your south, that you would want your signage on. Everything to the north is waste, because once you're there, you already know where you are.
That's staff's position. Yes, correct. Yeah.
So I wouldn't be opposed to signs on the east, west, and south. Cumulatively meeting square footage requirements of city. And once you're in the back, you already should know where you are. As for the slanted landing pads, those, that's a non-starter for me. I don't care if there's a functional flat roof with a fake Home Depot type gable with at least a 6 and 12 pitch and metal roofing on top of it, but as is on that south elevation, it looks like some weird creature failing to take off. It just doesn't work for me, and that's a prominent drive that I'll be making multiple times a day, coming straight down Placerville Drive, looking straight ahead at that for about a minute. And it's just, it doesn't fit Placerville. I'd like to see, I don't know if there was any mention of roof equipment that you needed to shield in a certain way, but I would prefer the gable look.
I'd like to ask another question of the applicant, if I could. Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm the one that raised the comment about the towers, and you commented about the mining influence and all that. I've lived in this area. I just had to add it up because I forget sometimes. 66 years. And when I first saw it, I had no connection or inclination that you were trying to do something along the lines of mining buildings. So it went over my head. The tallest tower, is it functional? Is there actually a space there, an office, or is it just an empty tower?
That's over the staff break room, and we haven't discussed how high the ceiling would be in there. So I don't know if we'll have a high ceiling in there to bring light into the staff break room.
Okay, so
but
it's not necessarily a functional
there is
room.
not a second story in it.
Okay, I don't want to elaborate. I made my thoughts clear about, and again, I don't think it doesn't say anything about mining to me, and I've been around mining buildings pretty much my whole life. But I would hope that maybe you and staff could get together like Mr. Friend suggested and come up with an alternative or a couple alternative, whatever, but I don't think we should sit here tonight and try to design something.
Did you guys have any other?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I really like your design.
Thank you.
Okay. I have spent a number of years teaching design, and I appreciate what you've tried to come up with here. Matter of fact, not too many years ago, this committee, or this commission, looked at plans for a local architectural firm down at the end of the street here, and if you take a close look, you'll see some of those same elements. So it is not something that's coming in from the outside. It's been here. I do have a question on the exterior elevation. Your plan shows 3 ATMs, and I look in the floor plan, I only see 2. What was the reason for the 3 and 2?
I think really it's 2 ATMs that will fit there, and I think it's just a graphic thing.
Okay, but it does, if you look at it, it looks like 3.
Okay.
And you go to floor plan and it only indicates 2. That's all I have for you. I'd like to make one other comment that worked on a project not too long ago where we too did not like the truncated mats on the corners, the bright yellow. And so I did a little research, and if it's a city code that they have to be yellow, they can be any color you want. They are designed for people that are impaired sight-wise. Yellow doesn't make any difference.
It's just contrast, yeah.
Okay, so I would highly recommend that you go to a gray that matches the concrete. Blends in really nice.
Yeah, you have to do a contrast, but it does not, the code, unless the city has an ordinance that supersedes it, the California Building Code indicates that it has to be a color that contrasts with the concrete walk or whatever walk it is. So.
I have a question. If
Sure.
I don't want to, I like the project, I like most of the project as it is. I don't want to delay it. What is your schedule? When do you need a demo? When do you need to start grading? Would you be opposed to continuing this item, doing a little bit of tweaks here and there? Would you need us to approve going forward with the demo portion? I don't know if staff would even consider that, but what is your construction schedule?
We're still finalizing the construction schedule. We wanted to see how the hearing went. I mean, and we still need to complete construction documents, obviously, and all of that. I would need to concur with the representative from Sierra Central to be able to give you a specific answer on that. Yeah, he's, yeah, so,
If staff would like to enter the fray here, a demolition permit, yes, could be issued in theory tomorrow.
Right.
It is a ministerial action. We do require a certain procedure that an applicant would need to follow, but in theory, yes, it could be applied for tomorrow, if to help with the timetable.
Thank you very much.
thanks.
Just one other comment I have. A few years ago, a town up the road by the name of Reading decided to build a bridge across the river. And if you have had an opportunity to go up there, they had a big debate about whether it should be a covered wagon train type of bridge or whether it should be something else. They chose to go with a world famous bridge designer, and they now have what they call the Sundial Bridge. And if you've had an opportunity to visit that, it fits into that community even though it is a quote-unquote Western town. So I think we need to not be tied in to one particular style. We need to learn to live with and enjoy a lot of different styles. I'll leave it at that.
Do you have something?
No, my inclination at this juncture, I don't know where the other commissioners are, my inclination would be to request, move for a continuance of this item for 60 days or, something along those lines, to give the applicant an opportunity to take in some of the feedback that they've received and perhaps to work with staff a little bit to come back with something that might soften this a little bit. Commissioner List, I really appreciate that, your comments on this, and I do think, while I really like to preserve what I consider the gold rush Western component at the same time, I did think that this building kind of offered a bridge between that era specific and the modern, and so I wasn't as bothered perhaps as some other folks were, but I think some improvements could be made. But I really do appreciate your comments on this. So my inclination would be to move for a continuance.
Okay, Mike, I think we can roll right into that after I've asserted my privilege to opine as well. And I personally find the building very attractive. I've seen this kind of architecture elsewhere, and it doesn't seem, it certainly doesn't look like somebody's trying to build a Saturn booster in the middle of their lot. That said, I'm not an architect. I'm not even an arts major. So while I have opinions, I think my opinion should be salted with a great deal of humility. If I were asked to approve this tonight, I would give it my full-throated support. There are other alternatives being proposed, and of course I will defer, as always, to the majority vote on this commission. And the other thing, I just philosophically, I struggle to remind myself, and I try to be diligent about staying within our purview, our remit, whatever you want to call it. And I've never felt that the primary role of the Planning Commission is as an architectural review committee. If the city thinks it needs an architectural review committee, then I think maybe it's time to stand one of those up. But I think the Planning Commission ought to have a very light touch where aesthetics are concerned and be primarily concerned with compliance with the full cloth of the regulatory environment in which we work. So thanks for that. And Mike, I'm going to ask that, given your advanced thinking on the topic already, that you propose a motion. Before we do that, would anyone on the commission like to ask questions of staff? Okay, Mike, so back to you.
Well, I would move that we continue this item for not longer than a 60-day period for it to come back to this commission and to provide the applicant and staff an opportunity to review the input that's been presented at the evening today to see if they can't perhaps come up with some other suggestions regarding architecture and maybe even deal with the signage issue. That's my motion.
I'll second that. May we have a roll call?
Before we do so, staff would respectfully request a modification to the motion to make it a date certain, and that would assist with the city's public notice.
Yeah.
And we have a calendar in front of us.
Okay, good. I deliberately didn't choose that because our meeting schedule has been quasi-erratic, and I didn't want to lock us in this. But I guess if we have a specific item on the agenda,
then we would hear it.
Okay,
yes, correct.
So this being February, I would go perhaps like the end of March or the first meeting in April. The first.
The second meeting in March, just for information, would be March 17th, and the first meeting in April is the 2 days after Easter, or April 7th.
Oh, I'd be much preferring that we not to meet on St. Patty's Day, but if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But then, so my motion would be to meet in April.
Can you
If
be
that's
a
all right with staff?
little bit more specific than that?
What is that April date?
April 7th or
That's it.
April 21st?
April 7th. That'd be a grand day.
As seconding the motion, I concur with the friendly amendment.
Got a friendly amendment. Would anyone care to take input from the applicant to see how this fits with their plans and needs? Want to go with April 7th or?
April 7th is good, I think.
So a motion and a second.
May we have a roll call vote?
Member Friend.
Aye.
Chair Lowry.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member List.
No.
Member Drobish.
Aye.
That disposes of that agenda item. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We will reconvene at 8:22.
I'd like to see a couple of towers, please. You guys don't recycle this stuff, do you? Yeah. You do, great. Can I leave it here with you then? No. This is coming back. This is the first one. I don't need this one. Great.
I'm not up there, so I'm happy. Not up here. Don't miss it, you guys. Don't miss it. But I'm actually this one. I don't think we've met. Your predecessor. I'm kind of listening. Just became aware of the project today, and just want to hear and maybe have a few comments. But I'm, my initial thing was, okay, we're using the hotel sites, of course, two other hotel sites. Talk to the chamber about the state or talks to hotel developers all the time. And no one seems to be interested in that, so they seem to be interested in what they're doing. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to come back to order in about a minute here, folks. Okay, we're back in session. During the break, I learned that we need to do a couple of housekeeping chores to better accommodate the requested schedule from the Sierra Central Credit Union project folks. So the first motion is a motion to reconsider
The previous action.
our previous action.
Second.
Okay. So I'd like to
Call the question.
call a question.
Chair Lowry.
Aye.
Vice Chair Drobish.
Aye.
Member Friend.
Aye.
Member List. Member Russell.
Okay, thank you. Next motion is a motion to establish a new date for the Sierra to reconsider or pick this item up again.
Come back, yeah.
Come back on this item again. So I'd like us to make our decision for setting a date to be informed by the Sierra Federal Credit Union's project folks. So if you could, if I could impose upon you one more time to come to the podium, and the next open date we have is the 7th of March. Is that an acceptable date to you?
Correction, 3rd.
3rd of March?
3rd or the 17th.
3rd and the 17th. I beg your pardon. The 3rd of March.
March 3rd would be acceptable. I spoke with staff about when they would need revised exhibits, and I feel confident that we can work with them in that time frame and get something worked out for you guys to look at again.
Motion.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Great. So now we're back on to our final project review of the evening. This is at the location of 1990 2000 Broadway, CUP 2014-02, SPR 2014-05, EA 2014-05, Placerville Commons. It's a public hearing to consider the application of Jerry and Shelley Walls for conditional use permit, CUP 2014-02, and site plan review, SPR 2014-05, to allow the construction and operation of an 86-unit senior housing complex, approximately 84,000 square feet, including parking and landscaping on approximately 4 acres. This is APN 048350-58. A negative declaration was previously certified for the site in January 2009 for the Hilton Garden Inn project. A CEQA addendum has been prepared to address modifications to the project since approval. Planning Commission's action is final unless appealed in writing to the city clerk within 10 calendar days. And hand it over now to Planner Painter.
Thank you. A little bit of housekeeping here. The commission is aware, the public has been made aware of due to a statement in the original staff report that came before you. An errata sheet was prepared, circulated to you prior to this meeting. It was offered to the applicant and received. It was posted on the city's website as of Monday. It relates to findings of fact for this item, and there are minor changes, but they direct the reader back to the addendum and not the original environmental document. And that is the appropriate intent and necessary intent that the city was trying to convey. In terms of staff's report tonight, I guess one other follow. I mentioned earlier at the outset that we had received a comment on this project today. It is subject to this item 8.3. It is from Mark Acuna, and it is 1 page in length, and copies have been made available to the applicant as well as each of you. The subject site of this project is, again, 1990 and 2000 Broadway. It's in eastern Placerville. It's approximately 4.4 acres. It's at the corner of Broadway and Texarkana Court. Topography on the northern 2/3 of the site is flat. The southern third is moderately sloped and has a modest tree cover that is predominantly ponderosa pine. There are several abandoned residential buildings on the site. The site has a designation, land use and zoning of highway commercial. The site is also located within the Placerville Airport Overlay Zone, or AO Zone. The purpose of the highway commercial zone designation is to provide for freeway-oriented uses which are necessary and convenient to the traveling public. Uses permitted include hotels, motels, retail sales and services, and restaurants, and similar uses. Highway commercial conditional uses include gas stations, fast food restaurants, automobile sales and services, etc. The proposed use again tonight is a 86-unit senior living facility, and it is considered by staff to be consistent with the zoning ordinance definition of a community care facility, a use that may be requested in any zone within the city with a conditional use permit under section 10.3.4 City Code. Community care facility is defined as a use which is maintained and operated to provide non-medical residential care for its occupants, and includes a facility where the operator receives compensation for provisions of personal services in addition to the provision of housing, including but not limited to protection, supervision, assistance, guidance, training, therapy, and other non-medical care. The construction of Placerville Commons requires site plan review per the Planning Commission. So in addition to the use permit request for the community care facility, the request, because it's new construction of a commercial nature, it is subject to the site plan review section of 1049, which the commission is well versed in. This facility would be 86 units, as I mentioned. It is 3 stories and will accompany approximately 84,000 square feet of floor area. Parking is planned for and provided in the plans before you tonight, as well as landscaping and an outdoor area for site residents to enjoy. The facility will be licensed by the state per the application information from the applicant, and will offer a variety of services to its residences, including food services, light entertainment, and semi-active outdoor activities. Construction would require the removal of the existing abandoned residence at the lower level of the site, and this is the residence that's closest to Broadway and the intersection with Texerna. That structure is an abandoned 4-unit apartment complex. There is a second unit on the site, which at this point the applicant has potential use of that building for a future construction or future use. And that future use would, the way the city understands that potential, would come back before you as either a modification to this conditional use permit and or site plan review, or a standalone brand new application. At this point, they are not proposing to do anything with the building that sits upslope from to the south of the site. The architectural theme or style for the proposed commons is considered contemporary. The primary building surface is plaster and complemented with various earth tone colors throughout the site. Stone veneer along the Broadway elevation further complements the site and the building's appearance. A porte cochere along the front elevation and trellis or pergola features also provide visual interest and break up the linear nature of the building. There is a variable roof gables that are components of the roof elevations facing Broadway, and this further complements the general architectural theme. A color and material board was also provided, which I think you have before you. If not, we do have a copy in the file, which we can distribute to you. Proposed parking would involve 40 parking spaces, and this parking is expected to meet or exceed the parking demands for the facility. Retaining walls will be necessary on the southerly and easterly portions of the site. Southerly wall height would be 10 feet near the base of the existing embankment. The easterly retaining wall between the proposed facility and Texerna would be a maximum height of approximately 8 feet. Grading and site construction would involve the removal of approximately 60 trees. To mitigate this impact on the site and to comply with the city's landscape criteria, significant landscaping of the site is proposed, including the reestablishment of approximately 72 trees, along with shrub and ground cover species. Project landscaping appears consistent with the city's landscape criteria. Exterior lighting for the site includes parking lot and wall-mounted contemporary light fixtures. A photometric plan did not accompany the request tonight and is not before you, so staff has conditioned the project that such a plan be presented to city staff for approval at the time of building permit construction approval, and that plan must meet and conform to the zoning code. In terms of traffic, the proposed senior facility is expected to generate approximately 300 daily trips. As mentioned, the site was planned for a hotel project, and this particular senior facility, it is estimated that the senior facility would generate 1/3 of those trips that would have been generated by the hotel project. Daily traffic generation and peak hour traffic characteristics for the senior housing occur outside the normal AM and PM peak hour volumes on Broadway, which typically experiences AM and PM peak hour traffic between 7 and 8 AM and between 4:30 to 5:30 PM. Given the low traffic volume and distribution characteristics, off-site improvements to nearby intersections and roadways are not warranted at this time. This conclusion is supported by the traffic study prepared for the project that was dated November 10th, 2014. The project will require street frontage improvements along the site's Broadway frontage, including additional road pavement and concrete curb, gutter, and sidewalk along Broadway from the western property boundary line extending easterly to the center line of Texarkana Court. As I mentioned, the zoning for the site and the land use designations are highway commercial. These designations authorize uses that cater to the traveling public of the highway, as I mentioned. However, the site is located east of the intersection of Highway 50 and the Point View interchange. It is not ideal in terms of its size, location, and proximity to accessory urban uses such as restaurants, and therefore the site has a very limited potential for a hotel project and is more appropriate for residential use, such as the senior housing use proposed today. The proposed senior community use for the site is clearly consistent with the recently adopted housing element. The facilitation of senior housing, which is a type of what's called special needs households, is a housing element policy. That's policy 3 of goal B of the housing element that helps to meet goal B of that housing element, which states, quote, to facilitate the development of housing for special needs households. As I mentioned, the site is located within the AO, or Airport Overlay Zone. A project that is within such a zone designation must be determined compatible with what's called the Placerville Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, or which I will use from now on, the ALUCP. That plan was adopted by the city in 2013. New development is evaluated for consistency with that ALUCP and its compatibility policies specific to noise, safety, airspace protection, overflight, and any special circumstances that are, and those policies contained within the ALUCP. Staff did evaluate this request according to those policies within the plan, and finding that the project as conditioned would be consistent with the policies related to noise, safety, airspace protection, overflight, etc. But because the project site is located within what's called the high noise risk zone, there is a policy that requires that residential uses within that zone, there must be a navigation easement be dedicated and recorded against the property. Staff has conditioned the project accordingly to have that recordation done prior to occupancy. The California Environmental Quality Act provides that only substantial changes to a proposed project involve new significant environmental effects would trigger a new round of environmental review via either a negative deck or mitigated negative deck or an environmental impact report when there is a previously approved environmental document for which is essentially similar to or a like-kind project. Back in 2009, the Planning Commission adopted a mitigated negative declaration for the Hilton Garden Hotel project that was proposed for the site. Now, under the Public Resource Code, section 221166, that section creates a presumption against preparing another negative deck, or EIR, a mitigated negative declaration, unless certain conditions are met, such as a new or more severe impacts than previously studied, or changed circumstances surrounding the project that may result in new or more severe impacts, or new information that is made available which suggests that new or more severe impacts will result. Staff determined that the Placerville Commons project does not contain evidence supporting any of these conclusions. Absence of that evidence, the city is required to prepare an addendum to the previously adopted environmental document and not a new negative deck or EIR. The addendum was prepared and provided for commission review tonight. It's part of your packet, was made available to the public, and must be considered before making a decision on tonight's project request. Staff identified an incorrectly stated finding in the addendum, as I briefly talked about before, and staff prepared an errata memo, excuse me, it's been a long night here, that was provided to the commission, the applicant, and made available to the public. I just want to make sure that's on the record. For the project, public notice was published and mailed in accordance with city policy, with the exception of the one comment we did receive today from Mark Acuna. That is the sole comment, public comment we received. Staff finds that the request is consistent with the city's goals and policies of the recently adopted housing element, and it appears that the location of the site and lack of proximity to other highway-oriented commercial accessory uses detracts its value for highway commercial land uses such as those described in the staff report and verbally just a few minutes ago. The proposed design of the site and architecture appear contextually appropriate for the site and surrounding area. It is consistent with the city's design standards and policies. Staff, therefore, based on the information contained in the record as a whole, staff recommends the Planning Commission take the following action. Make findings A, B, and C on pages 7 and 8 of staff's report in support of the addendum to the mitigated negative deck 2008-02. Receive and file the addendum to mitigated negative declaration 2008-02. Make findings A through D for conditional use permit 2014-02 listed on page 8 of staff's report. Make the finding in support of site plan review 2014-05, also on page 8 of staff's report. Make the general plan consistency findings A through C on page 9 of staff's report. And finally, conditionally approve the conditional use permit and site plan review requests, subject to the mitigation measures identified in the addendum and the conditions of approval 1 through 55, beginning on page 9. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Well, at this point, I'd like to ask the applicant's representative to come to the podium.
Balls. I am the applicant. I have been a resident here in El Dorado for 30 years. Involved in building, Little League, Rotary Club, etc. I first became involved in this project in 2009 when I purchased a piece of property that was scheduled to be part of the Hilton Garden Inn project. Shortly thereafter, though, that project fizzled out and it looked as if it would not get built. However, in 2012, I was able to purchase the other portion of that project. A 3.2 acre piece went into foreclosure, and I purchased it off the footsteps of the courthouse. Eventually, I was handed over the plans and paperwork and everything from the Mackey group that was trying to put together that Hilton Garden Inn project, went out, tried to market it to developers in the area, but nobody was interested. Number one, because it was considered by the banks to not be a very good hotel site, and number two, because of the economy at that time. We're talking around 2011, and no banks were willing to back us up. So after quite a few trips to different loan agencies, the Parks, Mr. Park and his son Sungmin, got involved. They are Hilton owners already, and they were interested in doing it if they could. But like I said, we just kept coming up against problems trying to get the financing until we came upon the proposed senior facility here. That generated instant interest by the banking industry, so that's where we are here now. Everybody involved in this are local people. We are not people from out of state or Southern California or any of that. Everybody that's involved in this project are are local. We intend to hire local people to develop this property, and hire local people to staff it. I believe right now that Placerville, the city of Placerville, needs a shot in the arm here for some new construction. This area has kind of been an eyesore, a place for homeless to congregate for the last few years. I've tried to keep them out. I've fenced it. I've kept it clean. We plan on eliminating all the buildings that are there and getting this thing going as soon as possible. I think at this time I should introduce my architect, who can explain better than I the project that you see before you. His name is Ken Fong. I'd like to bring him up and have him kind of present this case to you.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Ken Fong. I'm the architect on the project, TKF and Associate, out of 16 Bayside Court in Sacramento. I've been involved in the project with our client for a number of years now, trying to get this thing pieced together here. And I think we finally come up with a nice project that I think the community is going to benefit from this project. I'm here to answer some questions. There's going to be some other speakers, and I can hold back on any of the questions till after maybe we listen to the speakers, but I'm here ready and available to answer any of your questions. So I'll just wait till the other speakers speak.
Thank you, Mr. Fong.
Okay.
Does the applicant have any other representatives that he'd wish to come forward to the podium at this time? Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Dr. John Mooney, and I own the property right next door to the property that we're concerned about. I'm concerned about this property because I see children sometimes jump the fence. I'm concerned about safety. It's a detriment to Placerville. It's an eyesore. And for me personally, it's just a wonderful opportunity for Placerville. My good friends, Jerry and Shelley Wall, they've been here for 30 years, and he's very, very sincere about hiring local people to run it and local people to build it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Money. So what I think I'd like to do next is take some public input, and would you like to speak to the project, or are you another representative, sir?
Yes.
Oh, great.
I've known Jerry Walls for quite a while.
Your name?
Ray Pressgrave. And I live in the area. I go past this property twice a day. And I believe years ago it used to be a dental office. I mean, a long time ago, probably 35 years ago. Let you know that I've been here for a while. I'd like to see something done on the east side of town, and I think Jerry's project is worthwhile. It'll employ a lot of people in the area. We need a little help out there. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. George Osborne from Camino. Look around the room, I see a lot of gray, and some of us don't have quite so much, but we're going to be confronted with, some of us, the need of these kind of facilities, and the demand for these kind of facilities is exponential. I think this is a great asset to the community, a good project for a piece of ground that's marginal for what it was intended to be for, with the special use permit would certainly be appropriate. And you know, there's always little problems here and there, but the enemy of good is perfect. Let's get on with it and get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. I sense we're kind of easing into the public input portion. Okay. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to, after you've had a chance let me finish, and then I'll take your input. Then take the public input, and then with the understanding that the project sponsor and representatives with fiduciary interest in the project have a chance to respond to public input, first of all, and then I'm sure the commission itself will have some questions for you.
Okay.
So, and you're going to say?
I'm just going to say, I mean, I've got one of the partners that are involved with me here, if you'd like him to speak, or...
Yeah, I think probably what would be the most productive is to hear what the public input has.
Okay.
And
Very well.
then with your guys' attention to that, you may have some clarifications and responses to
Great.
those concerns raised.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask members of the public who wish to speak on the matter to come to the podium.
Good evening, Jackie No. I was looking at the project, so we're looking at 86 units and 40 parking spots, so I'm assuming we're not, most of these people aren't going to have cars. So I was starting to think, well, if I put my parents there, you know, I started thinking about isolation, how are they going to get around, how are they going to access things, and I didn't really see a good, how they're going to access the bus, you know, is there a plan for a bus stop and where that's going to go, and I would really like to see a sidewalk down to Jakeway, if you're going to put 86 people or plus there who need to be able to interact with the community. Let's, you know, give them a way to do that and not just have an isolated senior place. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick, I'd like to address that. I believe we're going to provide shuttle buses and services for our people to get around town whenever they need to go. Yeah.
Okay, let me iterate through the public input, and then I promise you we'll explore this further.
And Mr. Chairman, there'll be an opportunity, I think, for us to ask questions of staff, because public transportation actually was one of the things I would ask.
Yeah, that's on my.
Okay.
Chris Payne, Diamond Springs. I'm also, or have been, on the Placerville Economic Advisory Committee, and worked on the currently adopted strategic plan for economic development for Placerville. I'm not speaking for Peak tonight. I'm speaking as myself, but I wanted to give you a little background related to this location. One of our goals was to look for hotel sites, and then obviously this has been one. We also saw it as one, though, that we felt, at least in terms of our deliberation, and again, I'm speaking for myself, that this was not a good site. We believe that there are other better sites. Obviously, the one that was started, we would love somebody to buy that and finish it. Or there are a number of other places that we've discussed. But we did talk about this site in terms of different uses, how it could be used. And so what is being proposed is consistent, at least with a good portion of that discussion. Obviously, the people that own it and have tried to market it, they know better than I do about that particular property. But at the same time, I believe that the community needs in that area, it needs to have some purpose. It needs to have some kind of creation of place. And a project like this has the potential to create place, not only for the people who will live there, but also for the people who will visit. And essentially, it's important to them, families. You've heard testimony related to the changing demographics. It's fairly obvious. We've had this discussion at Peak related to the changing demographics, becoming more senior related. And in a facility like this, I can see why the banks or the financial institutions would want to put the money up for it, because it's a good idea. But speaking to the circulation, what I'm saying the pedestrian side of it, if we think about most of the other senior places, there has always been that connectivity to that facility and the surrounding area. And that is, in my mind, non-motorized pedestrian circulation. Now, you can augment by having bus service and create that situation, even electric vehicles, whatever you want to do in order to make it more environmentally friendly. But to take a walk and to be able that opportunity is also something you should be considering as a planning commission. I'm almost finished. I told Dr. Mooney here that I support the project. I support the project in concept. I'm allowing you guys, it's your decision related to content. And if you understand what I'm saying is that community, that place needs to have all of the elements that makes people feel that it's not an institution, but that it is a different part of their life. Socially, there should be things that they can enjoy, and I assume that will be included in this. We have experience now with Eschaton, 2 different locations. I'm talking about Broadway and the one that's there. I'm talking about Motherlode and Abraham Lincoln Manor. They're 2 different kinds. And also Gold Country Retirement Center. So we have a lot of experience with different types. But I don't know right now what this is intended to be or how it'll be done. It's up to you to decide. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I just, couple of reactions to that is, according to the 2013 household survey from Census, if you take the cohort of people from age 60 through 84, they comprise 25.4% of the population in El Dorado County, which results to a number a little bit north of 9,100 individuals. So, and I think everybody knows that El Dorado County skews old as it is. I think the median age is 45 or 48. And Chris, I want to assure you, my mother is 77 years of age and looking for an assisted living placement. And so this topic is very close to my heart. So I appreciate your input. Are there any other members of the public who would like to provide?
Sue Taylor, I think this is probably a good use for this property, and I agree with what the statements that Chris made, about connectivity and how usually they want to put these where they can walk and go and do things. Can you hear me better now? So there's just, being a designer, I like to design things that are aesthetically pleasing so that people have a desire to use that facility or go to that building or are drawn to that. And I know there was a statement made on the last project that the public needs to learn to live with some of these new designs. And I think there's places for modern design, and you also have to think about, you need something to be aesthetically pleasing to also make it economically sustainable. The building that I used as an example in the last thing that I mentioned, it's been sitting there for about 6 years empty because it's not aesthetically pleasing. So there's a kind of a balance in there, and I guess all I would mention on this building is if they could add some features to, it's a flat, huge mass. When you go from one house that's on that property to this mass that they're going to put there, it's going to be a big change for all of us. And I think it can be a good change if you put some elements on here that give it some dimension and feeling. And I don't want to stall this at all because I know they're really anxious to get going. But it'd be nice to be able to work with the architect maybe off to the side and see if there's things that can be added to this project to make it feel better when you drive. It is on a scenic corridor. We will all be looking at it every day. And so I just ask that it feels like it's incorporated into where we're going to drive by and say, wow, that feels good. That's a great place. Not like, ugh, why did they do that? I know you said you don't really want to go into architectural design because that's not really your purview, but maybe just thought for those that are working on this project. And then I think that might be it. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue.
Hi, Steve No, Placerville citizen. I would agree with everything Ms. Taylor just said, is to work with, I mean, first thing I did when I used to drive up to South Lake Tahoe as a kid is I would notice the blue shack that was boarded up, and that spoke a lot for our city, and it just looked ugly. The connectivity that Chris Payne mentioned, there's no place to walk. I mean, we sat in many council meetings about the upper room not having a good walk path for the people that were at Hangtown Haven. I mean, these are senior citizens. They're not dead. They're going to get out and walk. And they just don't have a good way. I mean, there's right off of Jakeway, you got the El Dorado Trail, which is a great walking path. A lot of people use it. And it's a great healthy activity to go do. So with that said, I would look at really increasing your connectivity to at least Jakeway, because from there you can get it to the rest of the city through the Placerville Trail or the El Dorado Trail. The other thing is we're looking at 86 units. How many residents? Because that's a lot of people in one area, and you got to look at, is our fire department ready to handle that type of number of people? If there's a fire, what happens? How are they going to get out? What's the evacuation plan? Really dig into that, because we definitely don't want anything, especially it's going to have cooking facilities and that type of thing, and accidents do happen. So we got to really take a look at that from their perspective. And how do you get the special needs people out safely? Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Yes.
Dolly Wager, citizen. First of all, I want to thank you guys for the service you do to the community, because you have a tough and thankless job up there. I know, believe me. So you are very much appreciated. I think this is a good project. My first concern was the loss of the hotel site, but I did my research today and talked to a lot of people in a lot of the different organizations in town, listened to staff today, even spoke to them. And hearing what the applicant said, it just doesn't appear to be a good site for a hotel. And there are 2 other hotel sites that there seems to be a lot more interest in the community. One of the questions that I would ask of the applicant is, the pictures, I don't know if they're true to color, if it's earth tones or yellow. I just wasn't quite sure. But as our chair mentioned, this is not an architectural review committee, and I appreciated that comment. So I'll get to some of my other thoughts. Talks about 84 units with 40 parking spaces. So as other people have talked about, that means you have a community that everyone doesn't have a car. So I just want to make sure that the sidewalks that are required are long enough for them to get down to Broadway. This also means that you're going to need transit a lot. Fortunately, we have a really, really good transit. El Dorado Transit, I'm sure, would be willing to work with them, make sure that you have transit there besides the shuttle service. I'd like to see them talk to them, and make sure that there's a turnout for that, or that, make sure there is a stop right there. The last thing is that we need to kickstart the gentrification up on Broadway, Upper Broadway. And I think this is a really good opportunity. You're bringing in 84 units. That's a good reason for people to start growing up there and fixing up there. If you put in a 12-unit thing, people might not have as much motivation. So it looks like a great project to me, looks well thought out, and thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, all right. I'd like to ask the project sponsor and his colleagues to allow the Planning Commission to grill you a little bit now.
You want to come up with me?
As I mentioned to Chris earlier, this project is close to my heart because of a family thing. I would, for those who may have some questions about the emergency services support, you know, if you had the great good fortune to read this 30-odd page document earlier today, you know, you'd see that the fire department says, yeah, we can handle it. The PD says, yeah, we can handle it. I work for the state, and I'm in the same union as the state fire marshals, and I promise you the state fire marshals will see to it that that building has appropriate egress and sprinklering. And then the last thing I'll bloviate about is the accessibility. I have some friends whose parents are in a 7-story building that's a assisted living facility, which is actually buried right in the middle of a development of single-family homes. So transit in and out, whether it be provided by, in that case, it's a shuttle bus provided by the operator of the home, or whether it be local transit. Given the proximity of the Eschaton off of Blair's Lane, you know, my evaluation would be to look at what's available to the folks at the Eschaton facility there in terms of how they can be connected transit or shuttle-wise, and whatever Eschaton is doing for its people up there, I would regard as the minimum baseline to be achieved by any other developments. That's all I have to say. So any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One was brought up by someone in the community. My concern with the project is the off-street parking. You call for 40 spaces for 84 rooms. You also say that you'll have about 15 staff members on site at any one time, which means that 3 times during the day, you're going to have parking for 30 people. I also noticed in there they said something about that there would only be 5 cars out of the 15, and in reality, I don't think that's quite right. So I have a concern with that. If we break that down, you have, even if we had 25 staff members at one time, 3 times a day on staff, that only leaves 15 spaces for the other 45. And when you're talking about the number of units that you have with 2 bedrooms, which means you're going to have more mobile people, I think you're short on parking. And I think I didn't see where the state give you a whole lot of help on planning for that. You were kind of on your own, and personally, I just don't think it's enough. I'd like you to address that.
Yeah, this is Sungwin Park. I'm a partner with Jerry here. I just want to clarify exactly what the project is. It's an assisted living facility. So the people that are going to stay there they're very unlikely that they can walk out by themselves. In fact, we would prevent them from walking out by themselves. If you want to see an example, you have Eschaton. They have actually 3 types of facilities in their property. One is the detached homes that you see. That's independent living. So those people are mobile and they're able to walk around and also explore the neighborhood if they needed to, and some of them even may have vehicles. They also have a bungalow what they call a bungalow, and those are connected units. They're not detached, but they're connected units. But they don't to go to eat or to get any of the services from Eschaton. You would actually have to walk across to the assisted living facility. And so those people also have to be a little bit mobile. The people in the assisted living facility are they're either on like walkers, and most of them walk very, very slowly. You would not want them to be walking on the street or be leaving the facility on their own. And so we do provide a shuttle bus, but that shuttle has a driver, and also when we take them out to their doctor appointments or to maybe a little bit of shopping, we have an attendant there, so they're not just roaming around by themselves. So that's kind of the difference. So in terms of parking wise, probably, most likely, and I can almost guarantee it, none of the residents will have a car. They just will not have that ability. The 40 parking lots that we're putting in is actually more parking lots than what is required of that kind of facility in the state of California. It's mainly for the workers and the people that provide whatever supplies or whatever that needs to come to that facility. So a lot of the public, I think, had a little misconception of what kind of people would be actually staying in that facility. It's the elderly, and they do need assistance. It's not independent senior living where the person actually is a little bit mobile and would be able to go outside without any kind of assistance.
So you're saying the majority, give me a percentage of the number of people who would not have a vehicle that would live there?
I would say 100%.
100%?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I still feel that...
And there's only three, excuse me, there's only 3 two-bedroom, two-bath units, and those are mainly designed for a couple and there's only 3 of them, and it may be that the wife is a little bit more mobile than the husband, and they do want to live in that facility. In that facility, each of the units really doesn't have a kitchen. They're encouraged not to cook. They may have a refrigerator in their kitchenette, but they have a meal plan which they come down, and throughout the whole day, they can eat if they want to. They can eat snacks, and food will be available to them. They'll have a library and maybe a little theater. We have people who help them every day with activities. We have like cooking class. We'll have some kind of exercise regimen, things like that. And in this facility, we do have we do want them to be outside a little bit. So. But it has to be supervised. And so in the back of the facility, we do have a little garden where, they can get some sunlight, and they can be able to enjoy the outdoors. But they would not be able to come out in front of the facility into the parking lot or into the street.
Okay. I know you've addressed the parking issue.
Right.
With the number of physical therapists that would be coming to that type of facility, visiting nurses, visitors, and then the workers that are there, I think you've cut it to the minimum. And I'm concerned about that, and I probably would bet you a lunch at a local drive-in that you'll have people parking on the street.
Yeah. And if I could put in more parking spaces, I would, believe me.
And the other issue I have is this. That I know that those kinds of people like to take bus trips, okay? And looking at your turning radiuses, I have a real doubt that you could get a 60-foot bus in those turning radiuses and back out on the street.
Right. I mean, we won't be having a large bus. We'll be having a, what would you call it? I'd say a 20-seater, 25-seater shuttle. And that would be fine. And also, because of the fire codes and things like that, I mean, you have to be able to have a fire truck go into that area. So I think we can cover that and satisfy those requirements. But this shuttle, you have to sign up for certain times, and some of these people will have doctor appointments that they have to go to. You're not going to have a whole crowd going all at the same time. There'll be there's going to be schedules, and that shuttle will be used continuously because everybody will have a chance to get on the shuttle and either do their kind of errands, whether it has to be, most of them it will be probably related to medical services. So.
Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Staff has a couple of things to add to that. Number one, I did have a communication with a staff member of the El Dorado Transit, and they had some questions about the project layout, access, things that member list is describing. Their two main concerns were this: the access into the site in terms of their turn and radii to get from Upper Broadway into the driveway encroachment. And they would like to see a modification of that, and staff offered to work with them at the time of a construction permit. And I'll explain what staff may be modifying the site. I don't think it needs to be conditions as such, but we can work with them to do it. As you know, if you are familiar with the layout, there are landscape islands that separate the inbound and outbound traffic, and that is a design component that's part of our design guidelines, and it is encouraged by staff. Staff would be willing to truncate the length of that as you approach Broadway, and that would allow their vehicles, which they were specifically asking for their dial-a-ride vehicles, not the scheduled transit service. I don't believe they have any intention of servicing that site at this time. But the dial-a-ride vehicles, which are much smaller, perhaps a smaller scale than what you're describing, they were curious about that turning radii, and they were curious about the porte cochere to make sure that their vehicle could go underneath it. And they inquired about a 15-foot grade to bottom of, and I believe that's what the plans is scaled for. So I thought I'd share that with you. The other, it's late, I've forgotten the other. I'm sorry. If I think about it, I'll bring it up.
I think my eyes are still trying to recover from the tiny print on these documents. That was not appreciated, but anyway, I went through it. I have a question that looks like at the rear, at the south and at the east, there's going to be some significant retaining walls. So I'm wondering
Our architect can maybe answer
Okay, the height of them and the distance from the building. And from what point do they terminate to zero?
Basically, when we first got this project, we were looking in terms of how the hotel was laid out, and pretty much the hotel had taken the whole hillside down and pushed the building back to get the size of their hotel in there. We in turn limit the size of our retaining walls, which was a lot lower than the original hotel, by moving the building forward. So we basically kept the hillside, and looks like we're now more than 6 feet or close to 8 feet in height, for the wall. There's a ditch back there. We're gonna grade that out and put piping through there, but we're looking at maybe 6 to 8 feet at the most.
Okay, because on one of these pages, it showed the cross-section at the south side being 10 feet,
Yeah.
and the cross-section on the east side, Texarna, being 8.5 feet.
Yeah, at this preliminary stage, without the final working drawings, you know, that's not exactly, you know, we don't know, if it could be 10 feet, or it could be less.
Do you know the distance off the building?
From our building? Let me take a look.
It kind of looked ballpark 8 to 10 feet.
Yeah, it's about that.
So my question is, the previous hotel, especially in its CEQA review for fire reasons,
Yeah.
the fire department didn't have a problem with it because they had access all the way around the building. And now it's not that way.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we took this plan to the fire department. Our access is actually from the upper level where we have the truck jackhammering up there. We actually have a fire truck going up to the top up there, so the fire be fighting from the top of the hill here. We met with the fire department on this before we brought it to you.
Okay, so they were content with that giving them access to the
Right,
back.
that's the access, and instead of driving into our development, they came all the way around to the top.
Okay. What about a hammerhead back at the loading zone where the propane tank is? Just maybe not even for the fire department, but for delivery vehicles, you have I'm trying to look at how the garbage truck's going to come and go.
Well, the garbage truck right now is coming about halfway through our building there. Our trash enclosure is recessed in our building, so they don't have to go all the way to the back. It's just halfway. They're gonna back out and do the turn and go back out.
So is that a front loading?
Yeah, front loading.
And then there's a trellis in front of the enclosure. Is that
Right,
height of
there's a
that trellis
trellis.
going to be high enough that
Yeah.
he's not taking
Yeah.
it out?
Yeah, they're gonna have to we're gonna have the service where we pull the trash out.
Your guys will pull the cans
Right,
out. Okay.
Right. That's why we put the trash enclosure inside our building.
And then what size delivery trucks do you anticipate?
We're looking at small delivery trucks. We're not looking at any kind of semi truck.
Okay.
You'll be almost daily delivery.
But smaller little box trucks.
Right, right.
And so they will have to nose into this unloading zone in the back and then back out?
Yeah.
Would you be opposed to creating enough room for them to not have to back up where there might be seniors walking?
Well, we looked at that. We looked at if we had to do that, our retaining wall is going to be, much higher.
I mean, if we could, it is very preliminary, so if we can make some more room, we definitely would do that. It's just, at this point, oh, sorry about that.
Get to use the mic.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of at our kind of preliminary stage, so we've been trying to make as much room as possible for everything. So if, as we do the working drawings, if we'll be working with staff, and if we can somehow make some more room, definitely we'll try to do that.
I was just looking at that, wondering if the propane tank could move to the west and you would start to create enough room for a little hammerhead right there.
Well, the propane tank, we decided to put it up on top.
Okay,
So
so
not
you
close
have
to our
that space.
building.
You move some of those
Right,
trees.
we're moving our propane. We didn't want to get it too close to the property line there, so we're going to move it up to our facility up on top.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think then you start to create a little more room down there that makes it a little better for delivery
Yeah.
vehicles to do a safer maneuver. And then the potential of even just a 20-passenger bus pulling out. I'm looking at the driveway to the east being is that your primary exit? I'm not sure of your circulation here. What's your primary circulation?
We that can be achieved if we're allowed to make the driveways wider. We can. If they're 30 feet, we can make them 35.
I'm just wondering about any vehicle, let alone a bus pulling out slower, considerably slower, just watching the traffic come down here, 40 miles an hour, and that corner there on Texarna in the county is just so blind, and you just have to cross your fingers and punch it and go.
Well, our civil engineer is going to be working with Public Works on the driveways, and if they have to be a little wider, we'll make them wider.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times when you make them wider, the traffic usually goes much faster. If it's tighter, they're slower. So in this case, you want the traffic to slow down a little bit.
Is there enough real estate in the front? Would you be opposed to adding a left turn lane?
Let me see.
Because I think there's a 50-foot easement, right, on Broadway?
Uh-huh.
And plan of 30-foot commitment for double lanes, double bike lanes. Is there some more real estate in there? We can get a center turn lane?
We can certainly take a look at it. Right now, what's planned actually is 30-foot of pavement, in addition to curb, gutter, and sidewalk improvements as well. Roughly comes out to around, I believe, 36, 37 feet, so we might be able to get a minimum width turn lane in there.
Okay, that would be nice. It might alleviate some potential crashes here.
Yeah, we'll work with staff on that. You know, we're going to have to get their approval from them. So we'll work with staff. You come up, if we need to add a lane there, encroach into our landscaping, we can do it.
Okay. And then would you estimate you might have potentially 90 residents at a given time?
No, you mean 90 actual residents?
Actual residents?
No.
You have 86 beds?
Well, yeah, that's our plan. 86 we have three two-bedrooms, so
close to
it'd be close to 90 like you suggested.
Okay. Why not, if the blue popsicle colored eyesore, you can go get a demo pit permit over the counter and take that thing down.
No, we just want to go through this and get the approvals.
Sure.
Definitely, we want to move as fast as we can.
That was my question. How soon are you ready to go? Is this a project that's for real, you're going for it, or another one where you get an entitlement and shop it?
No. Actually, Nick Hayhurst over there, who's sitting over there, is our financier. So we've been working on getting the financing. These days the banks are so sensitive. They want to know everything, and they have an opinion about everything. And so we've been working very, very hard to get the right loan and the right and enough financing to make this project work. And we are very close to getting the financing completed. Jerry wants to start tomorrow, and so do I want to start tomorrow. I want to get the demo permit, and actually, because we have a lot of problems with the people trying to get into, climbing over the fence and doing stuff. So we just want to make sure that the banks are okay with us starting on some of this stuff before the actual funding starts, because some banks have an issue with you going in there with before they actually give the approval.
Okay, so it's pretty viable.
Yes.
Okay. Architecturally, basically on the front, you have 3 columns, and one is very tall stone, the other one is medium stone. I would like to see the center and the right one match. I don't care too much if the stone goes all the way to the top, but I kind of like the timbered look for the finishing.
We have a couple opinions on that. We were planning to look into that.
I like that addition of those timber columns in there, or whatever they are. I don't know if they're round, but that detail helps it a little bit more to the front. I do like the stacked stone to the front. I'd like to see it maybe potentially carried all the way across the front. There's the 2 end sections. Looks like the stone stops. Those trellises will just be open to the weather.
Yeah, they're just to bring the elevation down at the ground level for a pedestrian.
And then the other question too was at the back, if there's going to be this giant retaining wall, and in the courtyard, everyone's just sitting out there looking at a giant wall of concrete.
We're going to have the...
No, that back in the back there, you're only talking about maybe 6 to 8 foot, and then we're leaving all those trees. We want to leave the trees. The Hilton Garden Inn, I believe, removed all those trees and totally demoed everything in there. We're leaving most of the trees there, so they do have something to look at
other than the retaining wall.
Nice. So that heavy slope just before you get to the upper driveway, that band of trees will stay?
Yes.
Okay, that'll help because it's a scenic highway.
Yeah.
And they like to see the trees more than buildings.
That was one of the reasons, you know, we pushed the building forward so we wouldn't have to encroach into that hillside.
Nice.
We saw more problems in the, you know, by encroaching in it versus pushing the building forward.
All right. I get
I have just two questions, but they're sort of broad. So the first will go to Mr. Fong, who actually, I thought you were the architect, but I guess the other guy's the architect. So I don't want the architect to go away because I want to talk to him. Mr. Fong, but I need you at the microphone, please, because we record your comments.
You mean Park? Park.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. He is the architect.
Forgive me. Okay, so you were describing what I perceive to be a very specific type of resident. And I have to admit, and I don't think I'm the only one in this room that was perhaps thinking something different. I think we had the impression of a much more mobile population, people that were fairly free and independent, but this sounds like folks that really require some attention. They're not bedridden by any means,
no,
but they're fairly
fragile.
limited and fragile, which kind of in my perspective changes the project somewhat, or my approach to it a little bit. So how is that population selected? Is there an eligibility?
No, there's no. I mean,
So
originally,
let me.
if there was a mobile person who wanted to live there,
Yes.
we'd welcome them.
Okay.
It's just that the way that the market works, it seems like you don't think of your putting your parents into a facility like that until they actually it's gotten to a point where you really cannot.
All right, that makes sense. So I can't challenge you on the market, and challenge is a strong word, and I don't mean it to be. So I can't make any real opinion about the market because I just don't know the market. And you're just saying this is basically because of what you offer and how your business plan is. These are the type of people that generally wind up here. And this gets back to the earlier discussion about the parking spaces and your high degree of confidence, which I'm not challenging. Your high degree of confidence about the parking needs. And on that, and that's the one question I had for you, is I can imagine that you have a lot of surge, like Mother's Day and Father's Day and other times when family comes, Thanksgiving, perhaps family comes to visit. And so how does the parking plan, and I hope staff is listening to this, how does the parking plan address those types of surge contingencies?
I mean, okay, go ahead.
On our parking requirement, we follow your city guidelines on that. So
okay, and staff report indicated that.
Right, we meet the guidelines, and with due respect with the employees, we can figure that out. Carpooling and other resources. Obviously, we're not gonna want to underpark our facility if we have a lot of guests coming to visit the family. We got to provide parking for them.
Right. So I'm going to assume that staff has kind of taken this component into consideration.
We've looked really into the parking and how we laid it out and everything.
All right. So now you're the architect, and the financier may want to cover his ears now. So first of all, conceptually, I think this is an excellent project for the area. I think it will really help. Perhaps could wind up maybe turning be a turning point for the development of the Upper Broadway area, which really is challenged, certainly. Now, however, I at the break, when we all took a break, I went out and I found a stick, and I learned how to write my name in the ground. And so now I'm going to offer some architectural comments, because this strikes me as being extremely monolithic. It seems like it's just a big, gigantic box there. And I realize that the structure, like a hotel, the garden, was kind of shaped like that as well. But it seems we could add some sort of architectural interest, particularly at the windows. When I look at this, what I see is, particularly in the summertime, is I see just intense heat, coming down on the windows. And so there's a way to put like some coverings over the windows. Or what about flower boxes? If you have limited mobility, but maybe you can go to the window and you can have a couple of daffodils or something you know, in a flower box outside your window, but there really needs to be something else besides just this fairly stark. It's pretty color, but it is still fairly stark architecturally. There is almost no interest here.
Yeah.
And we need something to break this up, something to make it, it looks very institutional. It's yellow, but it still looks very institutional to me.
Regarding the planter boxes out there, that's going to end up being plastic plants because of code requirements. The windows can't be open, you know, a certain width, and so you can't be out there taking the screen off and watering the plants.
Fair enough. That was just
right,
a
I know.
concept, but
I'm just,
something we
right.
can do here that breaks all. I'm not so concerned about the backside where you have your courtyard and all that, because you really don't see any of that from Broadway or even from Highway 50. And as much as I'd like to have it there, but at least in the front, it's got really sharp, hard, and very stark institutional lines.
why don't you let us work with staff and, you know, how we can embellish the exterior front.
Okay, embellish is good. I like embellish.
Embellish.
You know, so, all right, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, guys, do you have anything?
Well, I'll kind of follow up on what Michael just said. My impression of the front wall is it's like when I first joined the Air Force and was living in a barracks. You know, it's there's not much character to that front wall, and I know it's a problem to have some recessed areas or some other areas that stick out a little further instead of just. And there's a tiny bit of recessed areas, but it's pretty minimal. Perhaps you can, you know, think about that a little bit, or even some different panels of color instead of just one big swath of the same color. That, you know, makes it look like I think you used the word monolith. I have two comments about landscape. I'm always the landscape guy, and I kind of agree with the other Michael here. I had to get a magnifying glass almost to read what the
Sorry about that.
what the plant materials are. And I came across this pine. You're taking out, you're saving a lot of trees, and that's great. But you're taking out a lot of trees also. It's not, you know, it's a balanced approach, and I understand it. And I came across this pine down here, and you're only putting 3 of them in. You know, you only show 3 of them here, which isn't a huge number. But it was a pine that I wasn't familiar with. And so I got out my Western Garden book, and I found out, this is a little strange, I think. It's a pine that's native to southern Russia and Afghanistan. Now, you're taking out 20, 30, 40 ponderosa pines. Why don't you just put in 3 ponderosa pines instead of these Russian Afghanistan pines? I think that's, I'm not even sure you can find
I can have my landscaper look into that.
You know, well,
you know,
good. Anyway.
I don't see that as a problem.
No, I don't think so.
We just didn't want a lot of pine trees or that grow so high that it casts a shadow and blocking our, you know, our plaza, our garden
That's
plaza
true.
area.
Okay. Now, I've got another issue that I hope I don't want to rain on your parade, but this could cause a problem. And when the hotel project came to us, I think it was in '04, somebody came in the audience, and I don't remember who it was, but they told us that back in the 1870s or 80s or 90s, there had been a series of redwood trees planted up through Placerville. Every quarter mile, every something, I don't know the exact distance on that. One of those trees, we were told by this person that came, is on that property. And it's designated to be removed by, I read the report that your arborist did, and it's slated to be removed. Now, if that actually is, and the only other tree that I know of that supposedly is of this sequence of trees is at the Clay Street Bridge.
that is supposed to be one of those trees also. And this might be the only other one that's there. And I figured out kind of where it is on the plan. I went up there and pasted off and scaled it off and everything. I'd like to see a little bit of research done, and that was something that we were going to do after the hotel project was approved. I don't think it ever was done. But if that is a really historic tree, and it's probably the biggest tree on your property, I would like to see, and it's not in the building footprint, but it's in probably one of the traffic ways of it there. So, but I would hope that we could take a look at that and figure out if that's really, you know, I'm sure somebody from the museum or wherever would know if that's authentically that tree, one of those trees. And if it is, we should take some effort to keep it if we could. I don't know. It's I don't want it to present a huge problem, but I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that it was considered. Somebody came in and did some research on that. I was told by the arborist that tree couldn't be more than 50 or 60 years old. Number one, and number two, if you looked at that tree. At the very top, the top 20 feet is dead. It's dying. It hasn't been cared for or watered or anything for
no
7-8 years. But it's at the top of that tree. It's dead. I don't know if it would be agreeable to you guys, for us to plant as many redwood trees as we could to replace that. But I was told that it wasn't that old by the arborist. So if it is, I would like to see the research done on it if you're telling me it was planted when?
Well, it would have been in the late 1800s.
Boy, it seems to me a redwood tree that old would be a lot taller than that one, but I don't know.
Well, it depends on the conditions.
Yeah.
It's not a giant redwood. They get very big and quick. It's a coast redwood.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I just like someone to look into it.
Sure.
If it's not worth keeping, I don't want to make a big thing of it.
Right,
But someone came to us that time when the hotel was here before us and said that was one of those trees. And the one at Clay Street is also distressed. It's not.
But nobody has done any research on it beyond having somebody come off the street and tell us it was a historic redwood.
Well,
correct?
we could find out how old it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Boring a hole in it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that for you if that's what you required.
Okay. I almost hesitate bringing this up, but I like old things.
Okay.
And if you would change the Russian Afghanistan trees to a ponderosa pine, that would be nice,
Certainly.
And as I mentioned to the last applicant, I noticed that you don't have a lot, but you also have some pop-up sprinkler heads. And perhaps you might investigate, I think you're serviced by EID up there, not the city.
Yes, we are.
And even EID probably has someone on staff that would work with you. I think they do this as a service to conserve water. So you might look into that, and they might come up with drip systems that would alleviate the pop-up heads.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your kind assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're now at the point where commissioners can pose some questions to staff if they care to.
So I guess the questions I think that have come up and whether or not they've been addressed is, one is the parking concern and handling capacity, not so much for the residents per se, but I guess visitation by family and friends and whatnot. So I think we have to rely on staff to view whether the parking is adequate. And I assume there's going to be no parking on Broadway, No off-street parking. That's a question. Was it in there? I didn't see it.
Yeah, that's correct. There is no parking on Broadway.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that concern.
Correct.
And then I guess, that's all the questions I have directly for staff then.
The parking issue. I've been up to Escalon several times and to visit someone that was there.
Great. What's your name, ma'am?
Oh, Shelley Walls.
Thank you, Shelley.
You're welcome. And there's never been an issue at the times I've been there. I've probably been there 10 times. And I know another friend here, his mother was the one that was there. Less than 20 cars every time I was there. Her car was taken away before she was put in. My mom's friend just went into assisted living. She's thrilled. She doesn't have a car. I feel pretty confident that 40 is more than enough spaces from what I've seen when I visit an assisted living place. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Your use of the verb form "went in" makes it sound like incarceration. So. Anything else, Mike?
Not as a question, but as a discussion for us, I think.
Okay, so we'll come back to that before we. Okay, so Michael, you have something for staff? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My questions about the retaining wall was, and the distance from the building was that southeast stairwell. In an emergency, people exiting from there would find them, if they were tall retaining walls, find themselves in a trench. And they'd have to escape 140 feet to the north or 280 feet to the west. And I would like to see a mitigation for that if they're caught down in this little well at the southeast corner to put stairs up to Texarkana Court. So they have a quicker way away from the building. They're all incapable of. I mean, they're stuck on the third floor, can't move. In an emergency, the elevator doesn't work, they can't use the stairs. What's going to happen? Just crawl under a sprinkler and.
The fire department has a plan. What's their plan?
So the fire department's signed off on this. They have no problems.
We have 2 elevators in the facility.
But in emergency, when elevators aren't to be used or they're knocked out.
Yeah. I mean, you can, the best thing is you can go to Escalon and they have the same setup. Is you have the staircase. You also, if the elevators don't work, you have the staircase. Now, of course, you could say, oh, well, these people are very fragile or whatever. And so, yes, there's going to have to be whoever, the fire department or those other services that are going to have to take care that these are special needs people. And so, and we have assisted living facilities, many in the area, and they all face the same issues. But it seems like this. I think the fire department already knows what they need to do.
Well, if they've signed off on it, I had concerns. I just wanted to know that they had checked off on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I can address that. My name is John D.P. I'm a risk manager. I work with Masonic Homes of California. It's a very large retirement facility in Union City. And we train folks specifically on going up and down stairs with non-ambulatory patients with something called an escapo chair. Every one of these facilities has that for multi-story residences. Thank you.
I'm sorry, maybe I do have a question for staff. Pardon, yeah, I get. So, Dr. Moody, I think, is still in the audience. I was once told by an architect the difference between a physician and an architect is that physicians get to bury their mistakes. It's no reference to the good doctor, but the fact being that once we sign off on this, the architecture is going to be what the architecture is. And I have some concerns, and I think maybe Commissioner Russell, at a minimum, shares my concerns, and the suggestion was made, and it's made in good faith, I'm sure, about the applicant working with staff, but unless it's going to come back to us for approval of it, I mean, I want to have some sense of what that's going to, how that's going to work, what that's going to look like. Because I'm just not comfortable with this stark institutional appearance. So what would staff say would be a good way that this would be dealt with? Or we have to make it an actual condition that the architectural rendering's got to come back?
Well, to be honest, if this is your opinion and it may not be shared by others, then it would be staff's perspective that we would want such a condition formulated and adopted by the majority of you all as to any aesthetic additional architectural features, maybe materials on the corners, pilasters, something of that nature. Staff would prefer it to be a little bit more specificity, so it would help us in our review.
Okay.
Not to pinpoint.
No. And I had
comments.
actually planned this to be a
Okay.
discussion item
Okay.
with my fellow commissioners, but it occurred to me
see.
that maybe I need to talk to staff and see how that might work.
Yeah.
So we'll have that discussion, because I could be in a minority on this, but we'll see. Thanks.
I'd be open to granting approval, let them start going. It might give them an edge on financing, knowing that their local jurisdiction is going to give them approval, and then have them come back for some more aesthetic treatments to the front. I think some taller trees can help break up that facade, and there's a couple of fairly inexpensive things, but conceptually, they would have the right to start going forward, and we'll just deal with some little details for the street side.
Okay, well, it sounds like we're now fully into the discussion portion of this. So, I've stated my position on the Planning Commission's role as an architectural review committee. So, that's still my position. So if you guys want to discuss that further among yourselves, I'll be guided by, or I'll be just one voice among five.
Personally, I'd like to see a little more of those wood columns added to it. I think you can break it up with some taller trees.
When you first started talking about that, I was thinking about the White House. And the question was brought up about, can't you change the windows? And if you look at the front facade of the White House, you see a different type of window every other one. There's some variety involved. I'd love to see the front broken up than this plain straight across the front. To be quite honest, I had high school kids that would turn in something like that, and I'd give it back to them, that it was just too plain. It didn't have an architectural appeal. This reminds me very much of the new Hampton Inn down on the 50 freeway. That, it's a stamp. They use it all over. I like to see the front developed a little bit more. I'll leave it at that.
There's basically there's a central gable and two gables to the side. If those sections were to jet out, say 4 feet, I'm not sure how much with setbacks, if that would affect you. Just something, I like adding some more recesses or sections that expend out further.
I think the architect has heard enough from us. We need to give him an opportunity to take and work it.
Yeah, so what I would like to do is I'd like to strike the balance. I'm encouraged to hear this discussion. I'd like to strike a balance between enabling the applicant to move forward, yet at the same time also making sure they have to come back to us with the architectural offerings to do the breakup, and I'm sure that they have the professional skill to present something to us. So I think if we can craft a motion that kind of achieves that balance, then we can probably make everyone happy. And if staff has any suggestions about form on that, we're all ears. So
yeah, staff would
Seth would like to make a comment. You know,
Yeah.
basically the process that's being proposed right now isn't feasible, because basically if the applicant comes in and pulls their building permit, they're free to go and build it. Staff will be reviewing the plans and the elevations up against what's approved tonight. And so it would be our recommendation that you give enough detail to staff and to the applicant, so that we can work together and maybe come back to the commission with some alternatives, very similar to what you did on the last application you considered this evening.
Okay, so building then on that, if I may, I think what you've pretty much heard from us is our principal objection, our principal concern, really is just the monolithic appearance of the street, of the Broadway side of the structure. And so what we want to see that broken up, and that can be a combination of window treatments, colors. Mr. Drobich talked about use of trees, and also some maximizing the gables in the roof line, but just something that just breaks up, and it looks like probably they got like 6 sections up there. Just make those distinct. I frankly would like to see. So, for example, I mean, this just looks incredibly plain. Even just these 2 windows here, and it's just stark right on the edge of this corner. And so, breaking up these window faces in the architecture,
Or
I think
a
is,
pilaster on the corner, on the
pilaster,
corner.
yeah. I think it may be a combination of things that will just break up that incredible uniformity across there. So,
yeah, I've also seen some examples where they have a sectionoid type of structure, where each section has a slightly different material used, and that would help break it up too.
I think there's a number of combinations you can do to accomplish that. And again, I want to make sure that I'm representing what my fellow commissioners are also thinking along this subject, so I have a consensus on that. And does that give you staff enough direction, parameters to work with the architect on? Is that sufficient, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's.
So that would be a
they're nodding
condition
their
we'd
head.
have to add then. Okay.
Okay, John.
Yeah, Mike, you came up with the last motion. If we could, for me, I would like to have a motion like we had, postpone it, a final on this until, if it's agreeable with the other parties, until March the 3rd, I think it was.
Is that our next meeting, March 3?
No, we are anticipating having a meeting in 2 weeks with 2 items on the agenda and possibly a third.
How big?
2 weeks? 2 weeks to be detrimental?
Yeah. I mean, this was, even this coming out here today, we really wanted to start last year. And so, I mean, that's why our finance person came in, because he was so worried that it could get delayed more. So right now, the way that we have the financing, we're pretty much all set and approved. It's just that if we keep on delaying this, then all of a sudden that's gonna kind of then I got to put in all new updated financials, and then they just have a more excuse to delay it. So, you know.
Well, I'm sensitive to that, but I think 2 weeks would not be unreasonable.
No, to me right now, I need the decision today so I can get the architect going on.
Let me say, you know, I agreed to, you know, to embellish the elevation. When we get into the working drawings, we can add a lot of, you know, if you want some more pop-outs, you know, we can do that. We just don't want this project delayed, you know, and I agreed, you know, we agreed that the elevation needs a little breakup. So I'd like to see we get approved tonight, and I'll work with staff. they can bring it back to you and take a look at it. We're going to still, as long as we get an okay, we can start our working drawings. It's going to take us, a few months to do that.
All right, so I have to ask, just so you understand process, I have to ask staff this question, because if we approve this, as staff said, then basically you have no obligation to come back to us, and you could build exactly that, and I believe we would have no recourse. Correct me if I'm wrong.
If the project was approved with conditions, without some sort of specification that they come back with something in revision, then yes, they could, after the appeal period, they could request to move forward with what's been approved.
Now, for Commissioner List, but I do think, our out would be that we could approve with the condition that they have to submit architectural modifications within the parameters of concepts we've discussed that staff would find, that staff could work with and would sign off. But we would not get to see it again. And that's where, so this is really important. And I'm completely sensitive to your time constraints and the need, and I think it's a great project and don't want to be an impediment, but at the same time, that's permanent. It becomes that. And so this is our one shot, and so it's how we want to deal with it.
I think the building's at what, about 280 feet long across the front, give or take a little bit.
I mean, couldn't you approve that, or, well, couldn't there be a condition?
No, let me finish.
Okay.
I'm ready to approve it.
Okay. Yeah.
But I want to, and I trust you people to, to some extent.
Yeah.
But I would want, you to agree verbally, if nothing else. You made the comment, the architect, about pop-outs. If you bring a little bit of it out 2 or 3 feet, and then it goes across, and then some more of it out a little bit, so it's staggered a little bit. And if you have some different building treatments, maybe some of it's stucco, maybe some of it's stone, maybe it's different colors even.
Right.
I think that would, and window treatment, so they're not all the same. I would be happy with that.
Yeah, sure.
So
I mean,
but I'm willing to approve it tonight so you guys can move ahead. But, you've got to be honest with us and
yes.
say, yes, we'll work, before you start your working drawings, or as you do them, you'll add some interest and some detail and whatever to the front elevation.
Yeah, Jerry and I, we will add some detail on the, and we were already talking, even if you make, the biggest issue is we don't want, we've kind of set on the construction costs, so we don't want to all of a sudden commit to things that may increase the construction costs considerably. But doing like a 4 to 5 inch pop out actually, and we can do different paints or different materials on certain parts of the building that emphasize those pop outs. We can do that to make it look not so monolithic.
4 or 5 inches. That maybe you meant feet. I don't know. But
no,
I
no,
think
no.
4 to
Because
5 inches is
if
enough
you do it by, if you do 4 or 5 feet, that you increase the
that's
square
too much.
I
agree.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that. I'm thinking in terms of 2 feet. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe a foot or two,
Okay.
or even I built I build a lot of these Holiday Inn Expresses, Hampton Inns, and Fairfields, and we just pop them out maybe 5 to 6 inches, and it's a huge difference. I mean, visually, you don't need that much, and especially when you put different material or different paint on those pop outs. It makes it a totally different. So, I mean, aesthetically, definitely, we can do, we'll do some stuff where it won't look so flat. And then also what we did with our other hotels is that because they're so cookie cutter, is landscaping makes a huge difference. And if you break it up with trees and things like that, it definitely, I mean, right there you don't see much landscaping, and so it looks so big and just flat, but the landscaping will definitely make a huge difference.
Also, in defense of the architect and the design, that's one of the features of the trellis, is to break up that linear feature as well. Yeah. And I think the lower left elevation or color rendition kind of adequately shows that they are making efforts to enhance that viewscape of the site. So we're not really talking about the trellis, but that is a component. It does help with that issue.
Yeah.
So are there any other questions?
Oh, no, there's no questions. I think that I'm trying to formulate a way to craft this that, I think captures certainly what I'm interested in, what I've heard my fellow commissioners say, what'll be compatible with the applicant's needs.
Can I just say, as the applicant in question here, like I said, I've been a resident here for 30 years. I'm not going to try and build something that's not going to be appealing or to you guys. Can we just kind of get our approval? I mean, we'll work with you. Whatever you guys require, we're willing to work with you. I think we've stated that already. We need to move forward with this thing.
And I'm trying to craft a condition that will assure that you do, in fact, work with us.
Great, thank you.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to come up with, because at the end of the day, it becomes a contract.
Okay.
That we're obligated to you, and you're obligated to us. And this is where it gets really hard. Yeah, I mean, so this would be condition 56, I presume. Assuming there were no other conditions, did any of the commissioners have other conditions or items we needed to pull forward? So assuming that we approve as written. And correct me if I get this wrong, because I'm trying to figure out the timing, how this has got to work administratively.
Would it help to have a few-minute recess?
No, my blood sugar's so low. I'm afraid
I'm there too. Yeah.
Fall on the floor. That's nobody's fault but my own. Yeah, no, thank you. So, but basically, if I can, I'm trying to flow chart this through. So we're going to approve them. They're going to move forward, and what they're going to have to do, and I just don't know when it happens in the process. What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to come back to staff with architectural modifications to the front aspect of this building that achieves visual interest. It's going to achieve visual interest. It's going to disrupt the monolithic, consistent pattern of the front presentation. And specifically, no, I don't know if I don't want to prescribe necessarily how that would, which may include the use of material, color, thank you very much, window treatment, setback, dimensional variability, we'll call it, dimensional variability. Taken in combination, and landscaping, taken in combination to achieve the objective of visual interest and disruption of the monolithic presentation. That's about as good as I can cook it together. Well, we'll have them wordsmith it in the minutes a little bit, right? So you understand where I'm coming from. So, Andrew, is that adequate? Do you think you can work with that?
Yeah, what about conceptually approving the site plan, the CUP, aside from facade treatments on the Broadway side, to return at the next planning commission meeting? You can show your investors, your money guys, this is 99% done, we're gonna come back, we're gonna make the front appeal to the local jurisdiction.
Condition it on the approval of aesthetic approval of the architectural before we, you would have to approve it before you gave us the building
Yeah, so
permit, essentially.
your footprint, your structure is basically the same. We're talking about just a little bit of more detail to the front.
Okay.
So it's just conceptually approved, as written, all the conditions to return for final approval at the next planning commission meeting. We can all go home.
I thought that's what.
Yeah. That was, did you start a motion?
I thought we tried to do that before, and he said he couldn't wait 2 weeks.
He got really tired standing there.
I couldn't wait 2 weeks for not getting at least approval for the CUP and all that.
So had you started a
Well,
motion?
no, I haven't started, so now it's
Okay.
yours. Now you own
All
it.
right, I make a motion that we conceptually approve site plan review 2014-05 and CUP 2014-02 as written in the staff report. Do you want the detail of that broken down?
No, you've referenced the staff report, so
Okay.
that's sufficient.
As written, to return to the next planning commission meeting for final approval, and it'd be nice if you brought at least a couple different versions to approve Broadway facade architectural and detail treatments.
I'll second that for the sake of discussion.
And I have a discussion issue as well.
Okay, so my question is, can we do a conceptual approval? Is that, what does that mean? Not speaking against your motion, but.
Well, what it means is,
It's a nice way of saying continue.
well, no, you're approving some components of it, my understanding from the motion, but the one component you're not is the final elevation of the building.
Okay.
As it faces
Well,
Broadway.
if it can be that specific, projects approved, except the final elevation?
I'm trying to cut to the.
Can we do that? Is that, I don't recall ever doing that.
Well, you
don't
can.
approve
We're
the
not going to
elevation?
issue a building permit without the final fenestrations and what have you on the building. So they wouldn't be able to go through plan check right
Okay.
now. But they could start demolition. We could maybe even talk about grading plans and things of that nature, so they can at least get started in that fashion. So yes, but all this is subject to appeal. So your decision tonight is appealable. So technically, they would not be able. We would not be able to issue any permits until the 10-day appeal period's passed. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that at the outset.
Just to clarify, my motion was not for approval. It was conceptual approval of the project to return. So basically, it's being continued.
Oh, okay, I missed. I was waiting for. Continued is probably the proper term to use, exactly. So you're continuing this item to February 17th, and requesting the applicant to come back with some revised elevations.
It's a motion. Let it live or die.
Well, no, okay,
Is that-
so we're
is
still
that-
in discussion. Can we approve this project, actually approve everything except the final elevations? And require as a condition, the final elevations must return to us within 2 weeks?
No,
We
I
can't
don't.
do it that way.
I don't think so, because the site plan review ordinance or section calls for the planning commission to evaluate and approve or deny, or continue to request additional information. So.
All right, so with that, if
The
I'm
best way would be to
understanding
continue.
correctly, just back to my fellow commissioners, I'm personally not comfortable approving the project and allow, because it could just wind up like this. No offense, but it could. That would be your contractual obligation to us, our contractual obligation to you. It would look like this. And unless we put that language in that we had started with. So we can't do the conceptual approval. That's why I'm saying.
Or the alternative would be to specify
Which
in a condition what portions of the building must be modified.
Which is what I was trying to get
Okay.
at previously. And you took notes on that, right? You're not going to make me rebirth that. Please tell me no.
Well, no, I got most of it, and plus we can watch it again. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest then at this point is we would draw the conceptual motion, and we go back to approving the project, and then just add the condition that they have to work with staff for the modifications. I think that's best for them, and it's probably best for us.
We still won't know what it looks like.
We won't. Staff might bring us, as an FYI, might bring it back to us, but that.
It seems to me that the simplest way to resolve the aesthetics issue is to allow the applicant to come back with a revised
Oh, we would
elevation.
love it if you would, and I'm sure they want to.
And that could happen at the next meeting where you
Correct.
could approve the entirety of the project with the redesign of the exterior.
So we would technically continue it this evening to that meeting?
That would be the short, yeah, correct.
Okay, and the only we're still in discussion now for Roberts. I just want to know if Commissioner Russell's going to vote against that.
Well, I was thinking that they would rather see us approve it tonight, whatever we can approve, and still have final decision on the front elevation later. I don't want to hold them up.
But if, hold on, gentlemen, but staff's telling me that we really can't do it that way is the problem. I would like to do it, I would like to do that too, but I'm hearing that we really can't do it that way. So the compromise situation is we approve everything in 2 weeks. 100%. And I think what you've already heard from us is that with the exception of this component, there's not going to be any discussion.
Word that I mean it's just
Word of the
I
word,
mean,
word of
I
the
know
word.
you think 2 weeks is so it's not a big deal, but we're already too late, and we're very late on this project. I mean, we've been working on this thing since 2011.
Sure.
And we finally got the financing set up. This week he will be submitting. We're hoping to get we've already given them all of our numbers, the budgets, and everything else. And
All right, so what I'm hearing is
yeah.
that a motion with the condition that the architectural components are going to come to staff, and we're going to rely on staff to work that out, and we would ask that the applicant, once those are finalized with staff, that you bring those back to, at least as an FYI. We'll have no action on it, at least we'll be able to
well,
see
we
it.
can give you our word. We will.
That's exactly what we did with the credit union. We approved the project, and we asked them to bring back some roof treatments on the towers to the staff. So tonight, we're asking now to approve this project, and trusting them and trusting staff that.
No, correction, you continue that item.
That one's continued. That was absolutely
I'm
continued.
sorry.
Okay. So, but we
Yeah.
do have the option of providing direction to staff that this is what we're looking for, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to respectfully request that the maker of the motion withdraw his motion. As a seconder, I will accept that withdrawal and we'll make a new motion.
Well, personally, I think between the project and the jurisdiction, it's a give and take for finding the best fit for the project. So we just all work together. And if there was, I would like to see it done right, take the time. And I don't really want to spend another 2 hours trying to figure out how to break this front up. I think we need to continue till the next meeting. And if there was such a rush, why weren't you here 2 weeks ago or a month ago? I'm kind of feeling like I'm being pressured when we just need to take the time and get it right. So let's continue it to the next planning commission meeting.
Well,
It's a
the
motion.
point of order, we already have a motion on the table that we either have to withdraw or we have to vote on.
Was there a second?
I seconded it for the sake of discussion.
All those in favor of Michael Drobish's motion so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. So that motion fails. Now, do you want to make a motion to continue the project? I think a motion to continue would probably fail, but I don't know that for a fact, if you want to make a motion to continue.
I thought my motion was to continue. That's what I thought it was too.
No, your motion was to approve conceptually, which we
Okay, well,
can't really do.
You know what, it's your turn, Michael.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve site plan review SPR 2014-05, adopt the staff report as part of the public record, all the conditions specified therein, with the addition of condition 56, which utilizes the verbiage that I gave earlier, which essentially is the applicant shall provide to staff proposed architectural modifications to the Broadway, what is that, the north elevation? Yes. To the north elevation of the proposed project. These these proposed modifications will be designed to provide disruption of the monolithic appearance as presently proposed, and will be accomplished through a combination of architectural treatments, use of material, color, window treatments, setbacks, landscaping, dimensional variance, and other techniques as might be appropriately employed and compatible with the project to achieve the objective. And I will not say that again. That's my motion.
Second. All those in favor so signify. Oh, no, whoop. I'd like a roll call vote on this.
Member Friend?
Aye.
Chair Lowry?
Aye.
Vice Chair Drobish?
No.
Member List?
Aye.
Member Russell?
All right, that's tough. It's the best I think we can get. Yeah, it is really, again, a great project. Thank you for putting it where you're going to put it. I think it's going to be wonderful, and let's just, finish it right. And look forward to seeing what you ultimately come up with, too. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, well, we've found our way to item 9 on the agenda. So
yeah, an announcement. If you haven't met our new city engineer, please come on by and say hello. I'm sorry, we should have had that at the early part of the agenda. I wasn't aware she was attending actually, so that's partly my fault. But,
she won't make
anyway,
that
welcome
mistake
her
again
as
soon.
you leave. And again, we will have 2 items on the agenda. Well, now 3 items on the actually no, 2 items on the agenda next time, and that's it for me.
Okay. Okay, meeting adjourned.
21. You picked a doozy to come. Well, thanks for your help. Thanks very much.